How about a hug, Krabs, old pal?
I like that planky old chum.
For a moment there, what was years of rivalry seemed like it was finally about to end. Until Plankton steals the formula anyway, returning everything right back to where it always was. But what if it wasn't the case? What if, right there at the exact point in Friend or Foe, they both actually made up? What if Eugene Krabs did ask Plankton to stay to come work alongside him, to keep going as something other than enemies? Bikini Bottom might look like a very different place, and this show might not even be about a yellow sponge who works as a fry cook at the Krusty Krab. Now, let's actually rewind first, because to understand what could have happened, you have to understand what actually triggered it in the first place. Mr. Krabs and Plankton weren't always the rivals we used to know. Before any of it, before the Krusty Krab, the Chum Bucket, and countless attempts for stealing the formulas and exploding schemes, they were just two kids. And just like what we saw in the Friend or Foe episode, they were no regular kids on the block. They were broke, bullied, and struggling in life, to say the least. But just like any inspirational, motivational story, these kids had dreams. They wanted out of this hard life, and they thought they'd found the first steps on a burger stand in the back of a junkyard. It fell apart in one afternoon because they let the old man Jenkins bite one of their first burgers, which unfortunately would be his last. They both have their own idea to fix the recipe, but instead of discussing it properly, they start fighting over who has the right over the recipe. But in the end, the recipe only got torn in half as a result, where one half would later become the famous Krabby Patty, the other became the excuse for a war that never really ended. And so, since Friend or Foe was released back in season 5 in 2006, that means this is the story that triggers every single SpongeBob episode for almost 2 decades now. This episode is what's triggered the events of Welcome to the Chum Bucket, Fun, and even the first SpongeBob movie. Although, kinda worth mentioning that there's a new SpongeBob movie that claims differently. The recent Plankton movie says they were never friends at all, despite popular beliefs and the fact that it contradicts one of its episodes. But regardless, we're setting that one aside for tonight, because as you'll see later, the version that matters here, the one this whole video lives inside, is the one where they befriend each other first and lose it over a burger. That being said, let's save the best story for last and start somewhere easier. In fact, let's not touch the past yet. What if none of that backstory changed? The fight still happened, the formula still got torn in half, Plankton still spent 20 years trying to steal it back. But at the end of that very episode, Friend or Foe, both of them make up for good. They listened to what Karen said. Plankton asked for forgiveness, and Krabs asked Plankton to come work beside him instead, not as a threat to keep an eye on, as a partner. It's tempting to think that that alone would change everything, but honestly, I don't think it would. Or should I say, how long the changes would last, because by this point, the damage couldn't be undone with just a sincere invitation. Plankton's whole life is built around the chase of the recipe itself, and if you take that away, what's left of him as a person? Karen's the only one who really knows, and even she seems tired of asking. And Mr. Krabs? His whole relationship to Plankton isn't hatred, not really. I would think it's more of a habit, shaped by his days having fought for so long, both in the Navy and in the restaurant business, that he might not know how to fill the space if the rivalry just, ended. So even if they try to work together, maybe there's a week, even a month, where they actually run something together. And it would be just about time for it to fall apart anyway, because they're two men who never learned how to be anything to each other except enemies. Unfortunately, the door being open isn't always the same as being able to walk through it. But if anything, that would be a good episode to have. I mean, this whole plot about them trying to work together has been explored several times, but never to this scale. Maybe we could see Plankton be honest at first, only to betray Krabs once again in the final seconds. And then he fails miserably because there is that one man who is always in his way. Or maybe that Plankton really wants to change this time. Maybe he would be fulfilled by the fresh air. Who knows? Knowing that he is now part of one of the biggest fast food joints in the town, it would only give him an easier path to execute one of his plans to dominate everyone in the seas. Besides, I don't think Krabs or even Squidward would be against it, especially when the plan also includes dominating people's wallets. We've seen him do worse stuff, so the bars are already low. They would make a great villain pair. As for Squidward, I don't think he would care enough. The guy just wants to go home quickly. Granted, they'll only succeed if SpongeBob and Mermaid Man don't do something first. Yeah, it's a good plot to explore, Nick. Why don't you guys make that one? But regardless of the path they took, we already know the outcome anyway. So, as it stands, the only way their partnership would succeed is to have the changes happen way before this yellow sponge even enters the picture, which also means changing the past. Now, if there's any complaint I had with their backstory, and this will sound very nitpicky, which it is that their reason to fight in the first place is so childish. I mean, yeah, duh. They were children. Yes, I know. But then again, shouldn't children not have that much hatred? Yes, you could fight someone for not agreeing with you, but that kind of fight is usually over in a few days at most. You won't keep that until you're old and rusty. Normal children would quickly realize that the fight is not worth it, especially if the person is their one and only friend on the block, which they are. So what if, after a few days, one of them came up and said, sorry. Both of them laughed it off and became friends again. That would mean they've got the recipe. A perfect one. There's no piece of torn paper that's written pinch of chum that would end up being one of the most disgusting foods in town. There would only be one restaurant instead of two. Their restaurant. So what does that restaurant even look like? Maybe it keeps a version of the Krusty Krab name. Except now it's not Krabs anything. It's shared. Maybe it becomes something like Krusty Bucket, or they ditch both their names entirely and rebrand into something neither of them would have picked alone, since compromise was never really either of their strong suits. Hell, maybe the sign outside just says Krabby Patty's joint and leaves it at that, because at that point, the sandwich is bigger than either of their egos. The business model's the real question, though. Does Krabs' cheapness win out, and it stays the same bare-bones lobster trap operation we know, just with two owners splitting the till instead of just one guy hoarding it? Or does Plankton's brain actually get let loose for once? Not on world domination, just on, I don't know, actual food science? Maybe the menu's weirder. Maybe it's better. Maybe Plankton's out here inventing side dishes nobody asked for because, for once, somebody's listening to him. Or if it comes to the worst possible outcome, they could have joined up making one of the most evil corporate fast food chains in the 7 Seas, where staff are underpaid, the food is overpriced and sad, the interior is bland, and the customers can't stop buying them because they're so addictive, or because there's no other food option in the town. It almost sounds like the normal Krusty Krab, indeed, with the only difference being they had actually good food made by heart from a person with equally good personalities to bond with the customers. And Squidward, of course. I mean, granted, he doesn't seem to be enjoying chatting with customers, but every single one of those OG diner spots always had at least one rude server or cashier. I don't know. It's just the way it is, and it would feel wrong when it's not. That conversation actually tied to a more interesting question, which is, who's actually working there? Does Jim, the original fry cook, even get hired? Or does one of them take that role personally, since there's no need to outsource when there's two of them splitting the labor? Karen would still very likely get made anyway, since it was not really tied to Krabs' story in the first place. Plankton is bound to meet the love of his life whatever path he takes, and since she's good with numbers, it's only right to let her handle the cashier, or maybe even the whole finance thingy. Not really though, Krabs will be hogging the treasury anyway. So does Squidward still end up there miserable at a register? Or does he dodge that fate completely because the whole place is different enough that it never becomes his personal purgatory? I honestly think it wouldn't be much better for him. I mean, it could definitely get worse since he would be still bad at clarinet and has to work somewhere. I mean, he could work at Weenie Hut Jr.'s, or even worse.
Weenie Hut Juniors? Are you saying I belong at Weenie Hut Juniors?
Oh no, sorry. I was actually pointing to the place next to it.
Super Weenie Hut Juniors?
And SpongeBob? Does he even get hired here? Maybe he does, same as always. But that would be an entirely different story than Help Wanted, since he's just walking into a worse kitchen than the one we know, working under two bosses instead of one. Or maybe there's no opening for him at all, because Krabs and Plankton together don't need a third fry cook the way Krabs alone eventually did. Either way, Bikini Bottom's got one restaurant instead of two feuding ones. No chum bucket sitting there half empty out of spite. Maybe that's healthier for the town. Maybe it's just less interesting. I genuinely don't know which one's true, and maybe that's exactly the point of asking. Now, let's go back. Not all the way, just to that one afternoon at the dump, the day Old Man Jenkins took that life-changing bite. In that instant, neither of them stopped to think the real problem here is the bad recipe, and just focus on how to fix it. Instead, they turn on each other, blaming each other and resulting in tearing the recipe in half. What if it hadn't gone that way? What if, just for a second, they'd looked at each other and thought just like proper businessmen? It's just bad luck. Bad first try. The only way to go is upwards, right? And while that's heartwarming to hear, there's no shelf-falling accident in this version, meaning no secret formula born out of chaos. Just two kids standing over a failed burger recipe. So maybe they'll try again the next day. Maybe the second attempt is just as bad. Maybe they will continuously get mogged at school to the point the whole business quietly folds because these two kids are just, well, they just weren't very good cooks yet. I mean, I don't know if he paid any attention to their cooking skills in this show. Plankton for sure doesn't know anything about cooking. The chum bucket is living proof of it. His wife also couldn't help anything in particular. Besides, what does a guy who only consumes sunlight and air from a hologram know about good food? As for Mr. Krabs, despite the successful businessman he is, he couldn't do any cooking with his own hands. Or claws. Sorry. He made an explosion with a can of peas one time. A monster out of ground meat. The only menus he came up with himself and sells good is that plate of used grease in Greasy Buffoons. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't even consider that a food, despite the whole town craving it. Whether you realize it or not, this cheapskate only sells goods because he accidentally found a good patty batter recipe and held it dearly since then. At this point, I'm pretty sure whatever menus came later in the Krusty Krab are made by either Jim, the first fry cook, or SpongeBob himself. And if that's how it goes, there will be no Krabby Patty. Not yet anyway. Which means whatever comes next for both of them has to come from somewhere else entirely. At worst, the two of them could separate sometime after that, after realizing this restaurant business will never really work out. Krabs would end up going to the Navy anyway, and maybe spend most of his life there, and ended up in Shady Shoals as a Navy veteran. Plankton could have a better life, honestly. Without the resentment for Krabs, he would be forced to put his brilliant mind elsewhere. He could easily have a good career at a tech company, or build his own, or even fully committing to his plan to dominate the world, joining Man Ray in the process. However, as extreme as that change already sounds, without all the rivalry stuff, it's still not the biggest thing that will change here. Because think about what no Krabby Patty actually costs Bikini Bottom. There's a scene in Truth or Square where SpongeBob remembers his very first Krabby Patty in his mother's womb. He tasted one, absolutely loved it, and it became the whole reason he wants to work there. And if we take the patty away, and that memory has nowhere to come from, which means somewhere in this timeline there's a version of SpongeBob who never had that moment. He would have to find that moment from another food, or maybe another career path entirely. Squidward probably ends up fine, honestly, maybe even better off, since there's no Krusty Krab drudgery to trap him in a job he hates. Patrick barely notices either way. He will be off doing his things. Pearl still probably gets born and raised the same, regardless of what her dad's business looks like. None of them lose as big as SpongeBob. And if we zoom out further, Sponge Out of Water already showed us what happens to Bikini Bottom the one time the Krabby Patty actually disappeared. It's full of riots, everyone falling apart because one sandwich was somehow the thing holding the whole town's sanity together. So maybe a Bikini Bottom that never builds its identity around one burger in the first place isn't worse off. Maybe it's just a town that never got that dependent to begin with. Or maybe they could just fully succumb to kelp shake now. Who knows? At the end of the day, the two kids stayed friends for a long time, and somewhere down the line, a little Sponge lost the only thing he was ever going to be great at. So after 3 different points where this friendship could have survived, every single one proves that each one of them costs something. Recruit Plankton now, and it probably falls apart anyway. Let them cool off as kids, and you get a shared restaurant, a shared life, but you lose the specific sandwich this whole show was built around. Let the friendship never break at all, and you save 2 lonely kids. But somewhere out there, a Sponge never gets to find out what he was made for. There's no version of this where nothing gets sacrificed. Maybe that's the real answer to this story. Krabs and Plankton needed to lose each other so that somebody else could be found. Which makes you wonder how much of who SpongeBob is was ever really up to him at all. I already went looking for the answer to that one in a video about every version of SpongeBob that stopped looking like SpongeBob, where I found something weird about the yellow SquarePants himself. Go watch that one next, and I'll see you on the next dive. SpongeBob can't be alone. Patrick is his ride or die, but what if SpongeBob never met Patrick? Man, I don't even want to think about it. The effects would be devastating, as you'll see, because not only does Patrick bring out the best in SpongeBob, curiosity, creativity, and childlike wonder. Without him, SpongeBob breaks down every time. SpongeBob can't be alone. And there is actually already some evidence of this, what the world would look like if they weren't together. Like that time in Rock Bottom where SpongeBob almost soiled his square pants. That episode perfectly shows us this eerie AF liminal world, somewhere between a place where SpongeBob has Patrick for support and one where he doesn't. Because on their way back from Glove World, they get lost. And then, while SpongeBob goes to check out a bus schedule, the worst thing possible happens. Patrick goes home without him. SpongeBob eventually leaves Rock Bottom in a way that's certainly unorthodox. Something Patrick might have thought of, traveling using a blown-up glove balloon. But because he was alone, he became unnecessarily nervous, running between buses, ticket stalls, and vending machines. It's almost as if Patrick keeps SpongeBob's insanity at bay, or as if he's a compartmentalization of SpongeBob's madness. Does that make sense? And SpongeBob needs that little bit of craziness in his life to be a balanced being. In small Patrick-sized doses, that insanity comes in the healthy forms of positivity and confidence. When SpongeBob has to write an essay for the driving school, he once again spirals because it's something he has to do alone. Procrastination takes over, manifesting in guilt, and eventually turning inanimate objects in his home and even Gary into enemies, reminding him of how time is ticking away, and perhaps that he is just a failure after all. Even when he does sit down and start writing and writing and writing, and yes, even more writing, it doesn't turn out great. He even calls Patrick in the middle of the night, maybe as a distraction or maybe even hoping that Patrick would come over. But Patrick only points out the obvious, that SpongeBob's avoiding work. This is another reason I believe that SpongeBob and Patrick are two parts of the same being and that neither should be alone. Although Patrick is, well, a big dum-dum, he is always the exact thing SpongeBob needs when he needs it, and in the case of the procrastination, what he needs is a voice of reason. And without him, well, let's face it, SpongeBob is sometimes a bit of a psychopath, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. But how things turn out when Patrick isn't around, it's more demented than you can imagine. And things get worse and worse the longer you watch, but you just can't look away. At first, everything seems the same. Even Conch Street, where SpongeBob lives, at least seems normal. Squidward's house is still there, his pineapple is still there, and even the rock under which Patrick would have lived is still there. But now it shelters a new family of starfish who are really more NPCs than real characters. And when SpongeBob talks to them, they just smile creepily and carry on looking busy. SpongeBob, who we've established cannot be alone, channels his endless energy into finding something to do. With Patrick no longer at his side, well, he's never been there, he seeks companionship and stumbles upon Sandy, whose enthusiasm for discovery captivates SpongeBob. And I don't think SpongeBob is unintelligent, he's just sort of in a perpetual identity crisis. The dude doesn't know who he is, except for being a shape, dressed like a schoolboy. And a lot of the time, he just mimics the people around him. I think a lot of us were like that at his age, especially when we didn't have a best friend. So when Sandy introduces him to the world of science and invention, guiding him like a mentor, she sparks something new in SpongeBob, a glimpse of ambition that isn't just about flipping Krabby Patties. So, with his brain rewired and ADHD in check, Sandy now has direct access to his brain and teaches him about the world of science and the world above. But she still keeps him in check, making sure he doesn't invent robots that'll take over Bikini Bottom or creates a Frankenstein jellyfish or a god-level quantum computing chip and hooks it up to AI. You know, dangerous things like that. So everything goes pretty well for SpongeBob until something breaks the pattern, until Sandy goes into hibernation. And don't lie, we're all like that. When something suddenly changes in our routine, we feel lost and sometimes do stupid things. Without Patrick to distract him and channel his chaos, SpongeBob is a massive threat to underwater safety. First, having been calm and focused, he is now frantic AF, and let off his leash with knowledge of things he really shouldn't have knowledge of. Shit's about to get not so great for certain squirrels. He decides to go supersize on one of his favorite harmless hobbies, blowing bubbles, and invents a soap that blows indestructible bubbles. He blows and giggles and generally just enjoys himself. There is no end in sight to the fun he's having, but those bubbles have to go somewhere, and that somewhere is the top of Sandy's dome. More and more bubbles collect there until finally bubbles fill more than half the space. And finally, the dome is uprooted, causing salt water to rush in. And finally, the dome, now filled with water, rushes to the surface. What happens to Sandy in her tree, I'd rather not say. Now, anyone who causes such a catastrophe would probably take a few days off from shenanigans, but not SpongeBob. Sometimes it's just easier to keep spiraling and do even more stupid stuff to distract you from the stupid stuff you did yesterday. Instead of slowing down, he doubles down on the one thing he's always been good at: work. SpongeBob becomes a relentless fry cooking machine. His obsession with the Krusty Krab reaches new heights, bordering on mania. He works day and night, flipping Krabby Patties with an intensity that even Mr. Krabs will eventually find unsettling. At first, Krabs revels in the profits. With SpongeBob working overtime, the Krusty Krab churns out patties faster than Bikini Bottom can consume them. But there's only so much demand, only so many customers in the sea, and soon the patties start piling up. Towering skyscrapers of uneaten Krabby Patties rise above the rooftops, even above the surface, casting grotesque shadows over the town. The stench of rotting burgers fills the air, seeping into every crevice. And I mean every crevice. The once colorful streets of Bikini Bottom are now a dystopian wasteland, with fish picking through the decaying piles in search of anything edible. Mr. Krabs, broken and penniless, wanders the streets, muttering about lost profits and squandered opportunities, and every day gets thinner and thinner beneath his shell. While one fat pink starfish, vaguely familiar, loves it though, and is frequently seen latched onto one of the leaning buildings of rotting patties and bread. Through it all, SpongeBob hums cheerfully in the ruins of the Krusty Krab, flipping patties for non-existent customers. He doesn't notice the devastation. He can't. It's just not in his frame of reference. His brain cannot depict it. He's stuck in a death loop. But as the town deteriorates, so does SpongeBob's psyche, because SpongeBob is for the first time an outcast, and really friendless. Questions begin to gnaw at him, small at first, but growing louder with every passing day. Why does fire burn underwater? Why do they have sinks when the ocean surrounds them? How do they eat and digest food without proper stomachs? These questions drive him into isolation. He barricades himself in his pineapple, curtains drawn, muttering about gorilla suits and conspiracies and how he's being watched. Everyone's being watched. Bikini Bottom becomes a labyrinth in his mind, a surreal prison where nothing makes sense anymore. Squidward, initially relieved to have SpongeBob out of his hair, starts to feel the weight of the town's decline. The streets outside his house, once filled with SpongeBob's infectious laughter, are now silent save for the occasional crash of another collapsing patty tower. Still, Squidward finds solace in his art. Setting up his easel, he loses himself in painting, his strokes deliberate and meticulous, until one day he feels sad for the zombie-like SpongeBob still grilling away at patties. I mean, he's always actually liked SpongeBob deep inside. We all know that. He also knows that if he doesn't do something, he will go proper psycho, and no one wants that. So he takes SpongeBob under his wing and teaches him his ways. SpongeBob's first attempt is chaotic, colors splattered randomly across the canvas, but there's something compelling about it. For a while, it seems like they've found common ground. Squidward imagines a future where the two of them are celebrated artists, revolutionizing Bikini Bottom's art scene. But SpongeBob doesn't just learn, he excels. His abstract paintings capture the attention of Bikini Bottom residents who marvel at his unique style. Even Squilliam Fancy Son praises his work, calling it visionary. Squidward's pride turns to envy as his own paintings are overshadowed. His frustration only grows when SpongeBob picks up the clarinet and, through obsessive practice, surpasses Squidward's years of experience in mere weeks. Bikini Bottom residents, long tormented by Squidward's off-key performances, flock to SpongeBob's concerts. Squidward can't take it anymore. His resentment festers until it consumes him. One night, he sits at his desk, carving a clarinet out of driftwood soaked in poison. He presents it to SpongeBob as a gift, his voice dripping with false encouragement. SpongeBob, ever trusting, plays the instrument with glee. The haunting melody that escapes it is his last. But death isn't the end. Not for SpongeBob. Plankton, ever the opportunist, seizes the moment. Watching the events unfold from his lab in the chum bucket, he retrieves SpongeBob's lifeless body. With a serum he's been perfecting, Plankton brings SpongeBob back to life. The serum rewires him, dampening his cheerful spirit and replacing it with unwavering loyalty to Plankton. And also, he's just glad to be alive again and have a new friend, so he feels like he owes Plankton something. Plankton, grinning wickedly, puts him to work in the chum bucket. SpongeBob flips chum burgers with the same dedication he once had for Krabby Patties, only now he serves Plankton's goals. And with SpongeBob under his control, Plankton finally obtains the Krabby Patty formula. Not by stupidly intricate plans and espionage, just by SpongeBob doing what he does best, and one day falling back into his old role, starting making Krabby Patties instead of Chum Burgers. Soon, the Chum Bucket gets a new name, the Krusty Krab, new location, as the old restaurant had been crushed under a capsizing tower of filth. Bikini Bottom, now a shadow of its former self, barely notices the shift in power, and Mr. Krabs, well, he shared the same fate as Sandy. The streets remain littered with rotting patties, their stench a constant reminder of what was lost. The town's once bright colors are muted, its energy drained. Patrick still sits, lonely, silently on a tower, watching it all unfold, his presence as haunting as the town's decay. In the end, SpongeBob isn't SpongeBob anymore. The heart of Bikini Bottom is gone, leaving behind a hollow carcass. And as Plankton basks in his victory, the town slips further into ruin. SpongeBob often notices a pink friend-shaped thing coming into the new Krusty Krab for lunch and wants to say hello because he feels drawn to him somehow. But there's just no time, and he wouldn't want to upset Mr. Plankton. No, that would not be a good idea. This is the new Bikini Bottom, and nothing can change that. What if the most miserable person in Bikini Bottom had never existed? No groaning neighbor, no eye rolls, no sarcastic remarks, just SpongeBob, free from negativity. You'd think life would be perfect, right? And at first, it is. Bikini Bottom seems brighter. The Krusty Krab is busier than ever. SpongeBob is happier than he's ever been. No friction, no setbacks, just pure uninterrupted joy. But something is off. Not in an obvious apocalyptic way. No jellyfish uprising, no burning streets. But look closer, the smiles last a little too long. The laughter feels a little too forced. Everything is running smoothly, too smoothly. And then you notice it, the missing piece, the thing that kept Bikini Bottom from spiraling out of control. Squidward wasn't just a miserable coworker, he was the town's balance. Without him, Bikini Bottom doesn't just change, it breaks. Because when boundless optimism meets no resistance, what starts as paradise always ends in disaster. SpongeBob arrives in Bikini Bottom with nothing but a suitcase full of dreams and a heart bursting with unstoppable optimism. The town greets him with open arms. The streets shimmer under the ocean light. He finds his new home at the end of Conch Street, exactly where he always imagined it would be. But as he steps inside, something feels off. He scans the room. Everything is in place. His pineapple house, his cozy furniture, Gary's food bowl, and yet a nagging feeling creeps in. A space sits empty, not physically, but emotionally, like there's a gap in the world, an absence that shouldn't exist. He shakes it off. It's nothing. It has to be nothing. He has a dream to chase. Eagerly, he marches through town, soaking in the sights. Goo Lagoon is just as lively as he imagined. Jellyfish Fields hums with energy. Bikini Bottom is alive. It's everything he wanted it to be. And yet, there's something missing. It's subtle at first. The air feels lighter. The town's rhythm too smooth, too easy. He can't put his finger on it, so he brushes it off. Then he reaches the Krusty Krab. From the outside, it's exactly as he dreamed. The golden arches, the mouth-watering scent of sizzling patties drifting through the water, his heart races. This is it. He pushes open the doors, expecting something. A challenge, a hurdle, a rival standing in his way. But the cash register is empty. No bored sigh, no sarcastic remark, no unimpressed voice muttering, "Oh, great, another one." Instead, Mr. Krabs stands alone, a greedy grin stretching across his face. You're hired. Just like that, no spatula ritual, no ceremonial burger flip, no moment to prove himself. The job is simply handed to him.
Welcome aboard.
And it feels amazing, at first. Days pass. SpongeBob is thriving. He flips, serves, cleans. The customers love him. Mr. Krabs loves him. The Krusty Krab is more efficient than ever, but something is missing. No one sighs at his excitement. No one tells him to knock it off. There's no eye rolls, no sarcastic muttering, no resistance at all. SpongeBob has never failed before, but suddenly he realizes he's never had to struggle either. And without struggle, his victories feel hollow. For the first time in his life, SpongeBob feels restless, but he brushes it off. He still has Patrick. He still has Sandy. He still has his dream job. Things are fine. They have to be fine. And yet, late at night, as he stares at his ceiling, the silence presses down on him. Not the gentle hum of ocean currents, not the bubbling of his underwater home. Something else. Something simple. Something that should be there. A sound. A single, terrible, missing sound. And that's when it hits him. This isn't the Bikini Bottom he was meant to live in. SpongeBob is unstoppable. No matter how much he works, no matter how little he sleeps, the sheer joy of cooking fuels him like an endless fire. The Krusty Krab is his stage, and every customer is an audience waiting to be amazed. But there's a problem with endless positivity. When nothing pushes back against it, it doesn't just grow, it spirals. And with Squidward gone, there's no one to slow him down, no sarcastic remark to ground him, no reluctant groan to hold him back. Nothing. So SpongeBob does what he's always done. He shares his energy with his friends. Every single day. Before the sun even rises over Jellyfish Fields, SpongeBob is at Patrick's Rock, pounding on it like a drum. Rise and shine, buddy, it's time for fun. Patrick barely has time to process before SpongeBob drags him into another perfect day. Jellyfishing, karate, bubble blowing, more jellyfishing, more karate, and just when Patrick thinks he's free, SpongeBob rushes off to work, only to show up again the second his shift ends. At first, Patrick laughs it off. He's used to SpongeBob's energy. It's what makes him his best friend. But soon, a strange feeling creeps in. Something Patrick's never really felt before. Exhaustion. Patrick, the laziest creature in Bikini Bottom, starts doing something he's never done in his life. Hiding from SpongeBob. He burrows deeper under his rock, pretending not to be home. He makes up excuses. I gotta wash my rock today. Maybe later. SpongeBob doesn't understand. Patrick never says no to fun, but he brushes it off. If Patrick's busy, that just means he can go visit Sandy. Except, Sandy doesn't have time either. Sandy is a scientist, a thinker, a builder. She thrives on research, invention, discovery. Normally, she welcomes SpongeBob's antics. He makes life interesting. But this time, SpongeBob isn't just visiting every now and then. He's always there. Every experiment is interrupted. Every project derailed. Every time she turns around, he's right there, grinning, barging into her tree dome, showing off some new trick, new game, new way to make the day exciting. At first, she tries to be patient. Then, one day, SpongeBob, caught in the unstoppable momentum of his own energy, accidentally knocks over a week's worth of research with one of his wild ideas. Glass shatters, chemicals fizz and smoke, and Sandy snaps. "SpongeBob, you gotta leave me alone." The words hit SpongeBob like an anchor to the chest. Leave her alone? His smile falters. His voice drops to barely a whisper. I just thought you'd want to have some fun." Sandy sighs, rubbing her temples. "I do, SpongeBob, but not all the time. Sometimes I just need space, you know?" That word, space. SpongeBob nods slowly, forcing a smile, but his mind is spinning. He trudges home, that one word echoing in his head. Space. For the first time, a terrible thought creeps into his mind. Am I too much? But before it can take root, he shakes it off. No, this is just a bad day. Things will go back to normal. They have to, right? But the balance is gone. Bikini Bottom has always been chaotic. It thrives on weirdness, bizarre characters, unpredictable energy. But Squidward was always there, rolling his eyes, groaning, acting as the grumpy counterweight to the madness. He didn't stop the chaos, but he balanced it. Now, that balance is gone. The first victim is the Krusty Krab. Nothing seems wrong. The Krusty Krab is busier than ever. Customers flood in. SpongeBob turns every meal into a performance. They love it. Mr. Krabs loves it. The money pours in. But then, things start to shift. With Squidward gone, there's no one to say no. The customers get bolder, more demanding. The orders get more ridiculous. I want 20 Krabby Patties stacked into a perfect pyramid, with extra mustard. Sing while you make mine. No opera style. I need a burger that tells me a bedtime story before I eat it. And SpongeBob? He says yes to everything. He lives to make people happy. He doesn't stop. He can't stop. Mr. Krabs eggs him on. Keep 'em coming, boy. Happy customers mean big bucks. The line stretches out the door. The grill never stops sizzling, the cash register never stops ringing, and SpongeBob never stops moving. He runs on joy, on momentum, on pure enthusiasm. But even boundless energy has limits. He starts working 20-hour shifts, his movements slow, his hands shake, his smile falters, he barely eats, barely sleeps, and then it happens. Mid-flip, his spatula slips from his fingers, it clatters against the grill. SpongeBob doesn't pick it up, his vision blurs, the restaurant spins, his legs buckle, and he collapses. Mr. Krabs panics. "Me money-making machine! No!" Someone shakes him, he barely stirs. He mumbles something about jellyfishing, then blacks out again. And for the first time ever, Mr. Krabs realizes something terrifying. Without SpongeBob, the Krusty Krab is nothing. Bikini Bottom isn't the same while SpongeBob burns himself out. The rest of Bikini Bottom is falling apart. Sandy withdraws into her research. She stops answering the door. She stops socializing altogether. Patrick, finally free from SpongeBob's energy, spirals in the opposite direction. He becomes lazier than ever, barely leaving his rock. Jellyfish Fields becomes a mess. With no one there to balance it, swarms of jellyfish roam out of control, disrupting everything in their path. And SpongeBob? He lies in bed, staring at the ceiling. The town still looks the same. The sun still rises over Jellyfish Fields. The Krusty Krab is still there, but everything feels wrong. And then he listens. Not to the waves, not to the bubbling of his pineapple, to the silence. The missing sound. A single, simple, terrible absence. The sound of a clarinet that isn't there. And that's when he finally understands. This isn't the world he was meant to live in. SpongeBob wakes up before his alarm. Not because he's excited for another day at the Krusty Krab, but because his body refuses to sleep any longer. His limbs feel heavy, his eyes sting, and for the first time in his life, he doesn't immediately leap out of bed with a smile. Something is wrong. He drags himself into the bathroom, gripping the sink for support. His bright, porous skin looks dull. His eyes, once filled with unbreakable enthusiasm, seem tired. He blinks, forces a smile, shakes it off. I love my job. I love making people happy. Mr. Krabs is counting on me. So, like every morning, he ties his shoes, slaps on a forced grin, and marches off to work. But today, something feels different. The moment he steps inside the Krusty Krab, it hits him like a tidal wave. The line stretches out the door. Customers bark orders, louder than ever. I want a Krabby Patty with exactly 43 sesame seeds arranged in the shape of my mother's face. I need a burger that sings happy birthday when I take a bite. 5,000 patties now, or I'm leaving a bad review. SpongeBob doesn't hesitate. Coming right up, he dives into the kitchen, arms flying, spatula flipping, pushing his body past its limits. He's a blur of motion, a machine, cooking, assembling, serving. But no matter how fast he moves, the orders keep piling up. From across the restaurant, Mr. Krabs grins, eyes gleaming with greed. Pick up the pace, boy. Customers mean money, and money means happiness. Ain't that right? SpongeBob forces a smile. Right, Mr. Krabs. But then something happens. His arms grow sluggish. His vision blurs. The order tickets start to blend together into a maddening blur of demands. His head pounds, his legs tremble. He blinks rapidly, trying to focus. But then his spatula slips from his hands. It clatters against the grill, and for the first time since he started working at the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob freezes. The world spins. His legs give out. He collapses. The last thing he hears before the darkness swallows him is Mr. Krabs' panicked screech. "Me money-making machine! No, not again!" SpongeBob wakes up, not in the Krusty Krab, in his pineapple, staring at the ceiling. He doesn't know how long he's been out. His first instinct is to leap out of the bed. He can't be late. He can't let Mr. Krabs down. But the moment he moves, pain rips through his entire body. His limbs feel like lead. His brain feels like it's swimming through jelly. And then it hits him. He passed out. Again. For the first time ever, his body gave up before his mind did. And that terrifies him. Slowly, painfully, he drags himself out of bed. He stumbles to the window, staring at Bikini Bottom. Everything looks the same. The Krusty Krab is still there, customers still walk the streets, the ocean still shimmers. But for the first time in his life, SpongeBob feels nothing. And then his eyes land on the house next door. The empty house. The for sale sign is still there. And suddenly, his mind races. Who lived there? If he had a different neighbor, would things have been different? Would they have warned him when things got out of hand? Would they have stood up to Mr. Krabs, told him to slow down? Would they have stopped this before it was too late? Would SpongeBob have listened? The thought makes his stomach twist. Something inside him shifts. For the first time in his life, SpongeBob feels angry. The next morning, SpongeBob doesn't go to work. The Krusty Krab opens as usual. The customers line up. Mr. Krabs waits expectantly for his star employee to show up, spatula in hand, ready to flip patties, but he never does. By noon, Mr. Krabs can't take it anymore. He storms out of the restaurant, his footsteps heavy with frustration, and marches straight toward SpongeBob's house. He bangs on the door. "SpongeBob, get your square behind to work. You're losing me money." No response. For the first time ever, SpongeBob isn't jumping to obey. Mr. Krabs bangs harder. "Boy, don't make me cut your pay." Still, nothing. Inside, SpongeBob sits in silence, staring at his spatula. A war rages in his mind. The part of him that always obeyed, always smiled, always wanted to make people happy, tells him to fix this, to get up, to apologize, to make Mr. Krabs happy again. But then a different voice creeps in, a voice that sounds an awful lot like Squidward's. Why do you care so much what he thinks? SpongeBob grips his spatula tighter. For years, he thought happiness came from pleasing others, from saying yes, from working hard, from giving everything to the people around him. But where has that gotten him? Patrick avoids him. Sandy pushed him away. His body collapsed from exhaustion. And Mr. Krabs? He doesn't care. He just wants the money to keep rolling in. SpongeBob takes a deep breath, and he makes a decision that changes everything. That afternoon, SpongeBob finally arrives at the Krusty Krab, but not as an employee. He marches through the front doors, staring directly at Mr. Krabs. The entire restaurant goes quiet. Mr. Krabs grins, his old confidence returning. "Ah, there you are. Now get back behind the grill." No. The single word cuts through the air like a knife. Mr. Krabs blinks. What did he just say? SpongeBob takes a deep breath, steadying himself. "I said no, Mr. Krabs. I quit." The customers gasp. Patrick, who had been eating a Krabby Patty in the corner, chokes. Mr. Krabs stares at him, as if he can't comprehend the words. "You can't quit. You love this job." SpongeBob shakes his head. "No, Mr. Krabs. I loved it, but not anymore. You don't care about me. You just care about the money." Mr. Krabs sputters. "That ain't true." SpongeBob steps forward, his voice sharper now. "Then tell me, when was the last time you asked if I was okay?" Mr. Krabs freezes. The restaurant falls into an uneasy silence. SpongeBob exhales slowly. "I've been working nonstop. I passed out on the job, and you didn't even care." His voice hardens. "Well, I care, and I'm done." And with that, he sets his spatula on the counter, turns around, and walks out of the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs calls after him, but for the first time, SpongeBob doesn't look back. As he steps outside, a strange feeling washes over him. It's terrifying. It's uncertain. But for the first time in his life, it feels free. It didn't lead to the disaster you might expect. No villain took over. No world-ending crisis. Instead, something quieter happened. Bikini Bottom didn't explode. It didn't crumble into chaos. The sun still rose over jellyfish fields. The Krusty Krab still stood. From the outside, everything looked normal, but SpongeBob's world had changed forever. For years, he believed his happiness was limitless, an unstoppable force that could brighten even the darkest corners of Bikini Bottom. But without Squidward, that happiness had nowhere to go. No resistance, no challenge. And what happens to a force with no friction? It spirals out of control. Squidward wasn't just a miserable neighbor. He was the balance, the one person in SpongeBob's life who ever said no. The one who made him pause, the one who forced him to reflect, to question, to grow. Without him, SpongeBob became a machine, running himself ragged in pursuit of something that no longer felt fulfilling. And by the time he realized it, he had nearly lost himself. Because here's the truth no one likes to admit: happiness without struggle is empty. So now I have to ask, if taking one person out of SpongeBob's life changed everything, What happens when we remove 2? What if Squidward and Patrick were never born? No grumpy neighbor to balance the chaos. No best friend to share in SpongeBob's adventures. No rivalry. No friendship. Just a Bikini Bottom that never knew them at all. Would the Krusty Krab still be the success it became? Would SpongeBob even be the same without the 2 most important forces in his life, resistance and companionship? Or would Bikini Bottom be unrecognizable, shaped by an entirely different destiny? What happens when you remove a single greedy crab from Bikini Bottom? At first glance, it's a dream come true for Bikini Bottom. Plankton doesn't have a rival. SpongeBob and Squidward don't have to deal with a greedy boss. But there is something darker than just a different ecosystem in Bikini Bottom that surprised me. When SpongeBob arrived at Bikini Bottom, he was ready to find work, but he didn't know this would eventually lead him to build something of his own. SpongeBob arrives, full of hope and ambition. He walks through Conch Street and arrives at the place where he was supposed to get a job. But there's no Krusty Krab, no neon sign glowing at night, no scent of sizzling patties wafting through the streets. The heart of Bikini Bottom's fast food scene was never built, because Eugene Krabs never existed. And that changes everything, because without Mr. Krabs, the town is quieter and less chaotic. Not in a peaceful way, but in a lifeless way. At first, SpongeBob doesn't see the problem. He's still excited to chase his dream, unaware that the world around him isn't built to accommodate it. But soon, he'll find out and come face to face with the one force that is taking over in Mr. Krabs' absence. A force that doesn't welcome passion, it consumes it. By the time SpongeBob realizes what's happening, it may already be too late. He will have to work alone until an expected partner finds him, who will help him tackle the force that would take over Bikini Bottom. Meanwhile, there's no Pearl because Pearl's mother never met Mr. Krabs. But if you believe in those theories, which claims that Mr. Krabs isn't Pearl's father, then she might exist. However, in that case, Pearl is either living with her actual father, who remains a mystery, so Pearl will also become a mysterious figure. On the other hand, Squidward doesn't get a job as a cashier. No one else is willing to hire such a rude cashier. His life hit rock bottom. He doesn't have money to pay for utilities, food, clothes, and rent. He's eventually forced to sell all his belongings. With nothing other than his painting brush left to him, Squidward decides to leave Bikini Bottom and find work somewhere. It turns out to be great. He becomes a successful artist, but even then, he will be forced to meet SpongeBob and come back to Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob SquarePants arrives at Bikini Bottom with the hopes of making this place where he's going to make his dreams come true. But something feels strange. As he walks through town, there's no lively chatter. He spots Patrick, but this time, Patrick doesn't encourage him to take a job at the Krusty Krab, because there is no Krusty Krab. SpongeBob and Patrick pass a few sad-looking diners with peeling paint and half-hearted menus, but none of them call to them. They feel hungry and ask a passing fish, "Hey, where's the best burger place in town?" The fish blinks at him. "Best? I mean, there's the Chum Bucket, if you're desperate." SpongeBob laughs, expecting a punchline. None comes. The Chum Bucket? He's heard of it. Some rundown place owned by a guy named Plankton. Talking about Plankton, he is a completely different person. When he was bullied during his childhood, he didn't have Mr. Krabs to help him. They never develop a friendship, which would have resulted in the discovery of a secret recipe for burgers. Plankton is lonely and doesn't have a purpose. Yes, he does own a restaurant, but it's only there for businesses, not to dominate the world. But this very fact changes everything. Meanwhile, SpongeBob's future job, his purpose, is gone. He doesn't know it yet, but this single fact has already rewritten everything about his future. Still, he's motivated and hopeful. If the best burger place doesn't exist, maybe that just means there's an opportunity. His mind races with possibilities. He just needs to find a place willing to give him a job. But who would give him a job? Well, there is someone who is going to offer him a job. This job would take away his soul, but before getting that job, he needs to figure out that he wants to become a cook, and he doesn't know his purpose yet. He goes to Mrs. Puff's driving school hoping that she would hire him as some sort of cleaner, but she doesn't. He goes to the gym and other restaurants, but no one is willing to hire an inexperienced person. That's when he sees it, a job post that says fry cook needed. But this isn't the type of restaurant SpongeBob would want to work in. The Chum Bucket is a dark metallic structure. It's another failing restaurant in town. A drab, soulless building, the windows are fogged, the air around it smells questionable, and yet it's still open. People still eat there, not happily, not excitedly, but because there's no good alternative. Since there's no Krusty Krab, a healthy competition could never be developed. Residents of Bikini Bottom kept eating mediocre food, and none of the restaurants tried to up the game. SpongeBob chickens out just like he did in the first episode, but there's a difference. This time, he isn't confused because he admires the restaurant. He's not getting that vibe he would get if the Krusty Krab still existed. But Patrick is still the same. He motivates his friend. He forces his friend to go for it, and just like that, SpongeBob swallows his doubts. It's not what he pictured, but maybe this is where his journey begins. The moment he steps in, he feels it, the wrongness. The interior is nothing like the warm, welcoming space he imagined working in. The menu is filled with items that barely sound like food. The customers sit hunched over, chewing slowly, their faces blank. There's no joy in this place, no passion, just resignation. SpongeBob decides he doesn't want to work here, but Patrick reminds him that he has to pay bills. So, this time, he takes the job to pay his bills, not because of Patrick's encouragement. And then he goes back to the restaurant. From behind the counter, a voice slithers through the air. Well, 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 a new face, and such enthusiasm. SpongeBob turns, and there he is, Sheldon J. Plankton, who didn't even want to become a restaurant owner to begin with. See, since there's no Mr. Krabs who would partner with Plankton, his goals were something else. He was bullied and just wanted to earn money to show people that he was worth something. In his younger days, Plankton had dreams of science, of invention, of leaving a mark on the world in a grander way. But reality had different plans for him. He started his experiments, created Karen, but he couldn't get any fundings to further pursue his experiments and research. But he is a genius. He figured out that food is a basic need of every living organism, and there's no other restaurant that will truly compete with him. Plankton's restaurant wasn't failing, yet neither was it successful. It was just there and would cover Plankton's expenses. But everything changed when he met SpongeBob. Plankton saw something in SpongeBob from the very first moment. He was pure, ambitious, the very things Plankton lacked. But where others might have scoffed at SpongeBob's optimism, Plankton saw an opportunity. This sponge didn't just want a job, he wanted purpose, and that made him easy to control. So Plankton played the part of the wise mentor. He welcomed SpongeBob with open arms. Plankton was actually kind. He became the supportive boss that SpongeBob should have gotten in the original timeline. You might think that this would lead to a happy ending, but it doesn't. For the first time in his life, Plankton had something valuable, a friend, and a chef who could actually cook. And slowly under his watchful eye, the chum bucket transformed. SpongeBob's skills revolutionized the menu. The bland, disgusting mush that once passed for food was suddenly edible, then decent, then good. And with that single change, Plankton saw something he had never seen before: power. His restaurant stopped being a joke. Customers who once avoided the chum bucket out of sheer disgust now hesitated before walking past it. Plankton was a successful business owner now. He had money, a supportive friend in SpongeBob, and a caring wife in Karen. But that's when things changed. Plankton figured out that he now has so much power that he can take revenge from his bullies, from the people of Bikini Bottom who ignored him. But he doesn't know how to do that yet. At first, Plankton's revenge is just getting more money from Bikini Bottomites. So Plankton spread lies about the other restaurants in town, using his newfound influence to have them shut down over health code violations. And as his monopoly grew, so did his ego. SpongeBob never even noticed the shift. He was too happy to be cooking, too absorbed in perfecting his craft to see what was really happening. By the time he realized the truth, it was far too late. One day, SpongeBob finds himself standing behind the counter of the chum bucket, spatula in hand, questioning his choices. This isn't what he imagined. He thought cooking would be about passion, about bringing joy to people. But there's no joy here. The chum bucket is a monopoly. Plankton runs it like a dictator. His advertising is everywhere. His contracts lock customers into loyalty deals, and every other small business struggles under his control. But where is Sandy in all of this? Well, she would also get late in realizing what's going on in Bikini Bottom. And SpongeBob is just another cog in the machine. Days pass, then weeks. The more he works there, the more he realizes something is wrong. Meanwhile, Squidward is working on a painting that portrays a dead town. He has heard about Bikini Bottom and decides to visit this place for inspiration. Sandy is buried in her research, more isolated than ever, since SpongeBob never became the friend to pull her into goofy adventures. Bikini Bottom doesn't have the same life it once did, and then one night it happens. SpongeBob tries something different. He sneaks into the kitchen, reworks the chum formula, and adds his own twist. And he finally creates a burger that tastes even better. But he notices something. A figure is quietly observing him. Before he could see who it is, that figure vanishes. SpongeBob forgets about it and keeps working on his formula. The next morning, SpongeBob arrives to find his station cleaned out. His recipe is gone, but he still remembers how he made it. The ingredients are removed. Plankton stands there, arms crossed, smirking. "I admire your enthusiasm," he says, "but this isn't about making food, kid. It's about controlling it." SpongeBob realizes in that moment that this place will never let him be the cook he was meant to be. The chum bucket doesn't exist to serve great food. SpongeBob is done. Without a word, he sets down his spatula and walks out of the chum bucket for good. But he's not giving up. SpongeBob doesn't have a restaurant. He doesn't have money, but he has a reason. Bikini Bottom doesn't know what real food is supposed to taste like, but SpongeBob knows the truth. If people could just taste something better, they'd want better. And so it begins. He decides to start selling his own burgers. SpongeBob sets up a tiny stand in Jellyfish Fields, cooking patties on a makeshift grill, and handing them out for free to anyone willing to try them. But he doesn't know that the mysterious figure is still quietly watching him. At first, people are hesitant. Why should they trust a no-name cook with no restaurant? But then they take a bite, and everything changes. The word spreads. SpongeBob's food is incredible. It's fresh, bursting with flavor, made with love. It's everything the chum bucket isn't. Soon, people sneak away from the chum bucket, ditching Plankton's artificial flavors for something real. And that's when Plankton notices. The chum bucket's profits start dropping. Plankton sends spies to Jellyfish Fields, and they come back with a terrifying report. SpongeBob SquarePants is building something dangerous. Plankton fights back. Instead of competing with better marketing or better food, Plankton does something that breaks SpongeBob. Plankton isn't just watching from the shadows anymore. He knows SpongeBob is a threat now. Plankton realizes that SpongeBob doesn't even know how much power he holds. He's just cooking because it makes him happy, and that makes him impossible to control. So, Plankton makes his move. One night, while SpongeBob is grilling patties in Jellyfish Fields, the mysterious figure who has been watching him finally steps forward. It's Squidward, and he has bad news. "The health department shut down your stand," Squidward says flatly. "No permit, no food safety regulations. They say you're a danger to the public." SpongeBob blinks. "But I just started," Squidward sighs. "Yeah, funny how the inspector got an anonymous tip right before they showed up." SpongeBob doesn't understand at first, but then it clicks. Plankton. The chum bucket has the city in its pocket. SpongeBob never stood a chance trying to do things the right way. But Plankton's not done yet. The next day, a new restaurant opens, Plankton's Premium Chum Burgers, and the menu? It looks suspiciously familiar. Plankton didn't just try to shut SpongeBob down, he stole the entire idea. His new secret formula is a cheap knockoff of SpongeBob's recipe. The taste isn't the same, but it's close enough that customers start coming back. But SpongeBob knows this isn't over. Plankton won't stop until SpongeBob is either working for him or completely erased. And so, the real battle begins. SpongeBob doesn't sleep that night. He sits on the floor of his pineapple house, staring at his spatula, replaying everything in his head. Suddenly, the door knocks. SpongeBob opens it, expecting Plankton, who came to make fun of him. But instead, it's Squidward. You let Plankton steal your idea and beat you with it because you're thinking too small. SpongeBob blinks. Squidward tells SpongeBob that if he wants to win, he has to tell people what real burgers taste like. Plankton can steal the formula, but he cannot steal SpongeBob's talent. And that's when it hits. SpongeBob's mistake was limiting himself. Why not go big? Why not build the greatest restaurant in Bikini Bottom's history? And that's the moment it's born. SpongeBob doesn't sleep the next night either, but this time he's working. Squidward and SpongeBob partner up to launch a real restaurant. And within weeks, the impossible happens. In the very spot where the Krusty Krab should have stood, a new restaurant rises. It's called the Krusty Sponge. The doors open, and soon it is filled with customers because of SpongeBob's welcoming behavior. Plankton watches from across the street, gripping the windowsill of the chum bucket so hard his fingers leave dents. He has lost, but Bikini Bottom has lost something that it doesn't even know should have existed. In the end, one thing was inevitable. The Krusty Krab had to exist, although with a different name this time. You probably think that a world without Squidward would be a happier Bikini Bottom, but it is way more complex than that. And left me wondering, is Squidward just an irritated character to bring balance to the maniacal SpongeBob and Patrick, or is his presence holding back a larger evil? There is one character his absence affects in a profoundly horrific way. Without Squidward ever being born, Bikini Bottom feels out of balance. Sure, his personality might have been a lot most of the time, but Squidward's disdain for SpongeBob and Patrick gave their nitwitted shenanigans an extra layer of chaos. He was their unwilling participant in every chaotic jellyfishing adventure and bubble-blowing debacle. His reactions weren't just meaningless cynicism, they were the glue holding Bikini Bottom's wild energy together. Now, without Squidward torturing his poor clarinet and rolling his eyes till his skull muscles spasm, something's missing. A certain je ne sais quoi, which means, well, I don't actually know what that means. SpongeBob's life is mostly the same, except for the fact that SpongeBob now does all of the duties in the Krusty Krab, because he's willing and, well, cheap. And as for him and Patrick, their houses are now just too close to each other. Without Squidward's house in the middle, which used to serve as a bit of a barrier between the, let's call it, eccentricities of the Sponge and Starfish duo, so although they stay good friends, they get more and more irritated with each other's company, and slowly they grow identities of their own, especially Patrick, because what else is he gonna do? But there is one character Squidward's absence affects the most. His arch-nemesis, Squilliam. Squidward's old high school rival and self-proclaimed beacon of sophistication now stands unchallenged. He's no longer competing with Squidward's mediocre talent or one-sided jealousy. Without Squidward's nerves to work on, Squilliam's victories feel hollow. Who cares about being the best when there's no one to prove it to? He needs to go bigger. Much, much bigger. That'll make everyone see him for the god he is. So here's where it gets really good. After selling all his fancy things, his gilded doorknob, golden toilet, and even water B&Bing the top level of his 3-story house. That's Bikini Bottom's version of Airbnb, by the way. But anyway, cash in hand, he heads off to make the deal of his lifetime. He has a secret meeting with Mr. Krabs, late at night in the Krusty Krab after closing time. If anyone was near, they would have first heard screams and shouts, and more screams, and then finally silence. Somehow, he convinced Mr. Krabs of the unthinkable, selling the Krusty Krab. But what else happened in there remains a mystery. For now. Yes, to fill the void, Squilliam goes all in on dominating Bikini Bottom. He buys the Krusty Krab, renaming it the Fancy Krab, complete with velvet ropes, chandeliers, and a dress code that bans shorts, flip-flops, and gorilla costumes. He swaggers through Bikini Bottom like a king, but deep down, Squilliam can't shake the nagging thought, what is greatness without someone to envy it? He quickly shakes off that nagging feeling and takes his list out of his pocket. The Fancy Krab is only the beginning. Soon, he'll own the boating school, the kelp shake, glove world, and even the chum bucket. While he dreams of domination, Bikini Bottom's residents start to feel the ripples of this void, which has now been filled with the heavily eyebrowed octopus. SpongeBob throws himself into his work with even more gusto, desperate to impress his new fancy boss. Patrick, left without Squidward to antagonize, decides to class up his own life to fit Squilliam's standards, leading to hilarious tuxedo-wearing disasters. And Squilliam, well, for someone who claims to be above it all, he's starting to feel that something's not right. Why can't he shake that feeling? With Squilliam now ruling Bikini Bottom's social scene and SpongeBob and Patrick left to their own devices, things start to unravel fast. Without Squidward to begrudgingly endure his endless optimism, SpongeBob latches onto Squilliam as his new idol. In his eyes, Squilliam is the pinnacle of class and sophistication, someone to emulate. Determined to impress his new boss, SpongeBob tries to transform himself into a high-class employee of the Fancy Crab. His efforts lead to absolute chaos, balancing trays of extra Krabby Patties stacked like modern art, practicing overly elaborate greetings for customers, and attempting to play the clarinet during work breaks in Squilliam's honor, which, interestingly, is even worse than Squidward's playing, if someone of that name existed. Side note, the extra Krabby Patties are a limited menu item, and Mr. Krabs is nowhere to be found at this stage of the story. Make of that what you will. But now that I think of it, Squilliam did mention that Mr. Krabs was on a long overdue holiday on the island. Anyway, Squilliam, while initially amused by SpongeBob's enthusiasm, quickly becomes tired the fuck out. SpongeBob's antics start scaring away customers who came to bask in Squilliam's refined establishment. Fancy patrons don't appreciate a server who occasionally bursts into song mid-order or gets tangled in a chandelier while trying to demonstrate fancy table flips.
An electric charge, the sound in your head is brutal.
Without someone to absorb and react to that unhinged energy, SpongeBob is just a person that really needs professional help. Patrick, on the other hand, spirals into confusion. He knows there's something missing, but can't put his finger on it. He decides he needs to level up his life to fit into Squilliam's world and his best friend's new lifestyle. So he shows up to the Fancy Crab in a too small tuxedo, monocle in hand, demanding the finest extra Krabby Patties on the menu. When Squilliam denies him entry for being an uncultured starfish, Patrick is not impressed. And that night, just before SpongeBob closed up shop, he snuck in and grabbed an extra Krabby Patty. The moment he took a bite, his brain went into full-on alarm mode. This patty wasn't vegetarian like the old Krabby Patties. There was meat in it, and he was gonna find out who that meat had belonged to. Meanwhile, as the hole left by Squidward's absence grows bigger, Squilliam's influence takes over, turning Bikini Bottom into a snobby playground of pretentiousness and exclusivity. But this affects more people than just SpongeBob and Patrick, and in bizarre ways which lead to more and more catastrophes. Mrs. Puff is forced to open a luxury boating academy to cater to Squilliam's vision of refinement. And she has to do this with money she doesn't have, so she has to go to a literal loan shark. SpongeBob's failures escalate as he attempts to parallel park in a gilded boat while wearing a too tall top hat and two monocles taped together, which is not a sufficient replacement for his driving glasses. The boat did not make it, and neither will Mrs. Puff if she can't pay back those sharks. But there's an even darker side to the Bikini Bottom's new shiny facade. Sandy grows increasingly frustrated with Squilliam's disregard for the environment, as his fancy events leave Bikini Bottom littered with sequins, velvet ropes, and half-empty wine glasses. The two clash in an epic debate at Goo Lagoon, with Squilliam smugly dismissing her scientific arguments, which he really should not have done. You don't mess with a rabid squirrel. I learned that the hard way. But more than that, there is an air of not rightness. Is that a word? One by one, the Krusty Krab regulars start to feel out of place in this fancy Bikini Bottom. Squilliam's success starts to alienate the very community he claims to elevate. While Squilliam projects confidence, the lack of real opposition starts to weigh on him. Without someone like Squidward, there's no one to envy his wealth or achievements, no one to scorn or compare himself to. The joy of winning fades when there's no one to lose to. Squilliam begins to wonder, am I really as great as I think I am? As Squilliam's reign over Bikini Bottom grows, the cracks in his facade become impossible to ignore. The chaos caused by SpongeBob's relentless admiration of Squilliam, Patrick going through everyone's trash at night looking for clues, and the general alienation of Bikini Bottom's residents leave Squilliam more irritable and isolated than ever. Pearl is seen stapling posters all over Bikini Bottom that say, "Have you seen this crab?" Because, yo, where the hell is Mr. Krabs, by the way? Squilliam decides he needs to get order back. He needs everyone to love him, and he attempts this with his stupidest idea yet. It all comes to a climax during Squilliam's grandest event yet, a self-celebratory concert he's billed as the most refined night in Bikini Bottom history, hosted by your favorite octopus. This confused most of the attendees because they didn't even know they had a favorite octopus. The Krusty Krab, the Fancy Crab, is decked out with chandeliers, a red carpet, and Squilliam's face plastered on every surface. SpongeBob and Patrick are, of course, on the entertainment lineup. SpongeBob determined to impress Squilliam and prove his sophistication, and Patrick carrying a bedazzled kazoo and devastating information about extra Krabby Patties. When the moment comes, SpongeBob breaks out in a sweet rock ballad that's still stuck in my head. And the crowd went bananas. Where he got the time to write and practice that song is a mystery, with him working the grill, the cash register, and serving customers all at the same time at the Fancy Crab. Patrick, not shown here to spare your ears, did a solo on a super glittery kazoo, and he thought all the cheering was for him. But the adrenaline from the show gives him the gusto he needs to share the horrible conclusion he came to after eating the extra Krabby Patty and doing some detective work, which he will soon do. Meanwhile, Squilliam is surprised that everything worked out so well, but for the first time he feels not triumphant, but empty, and he lashes out. In a fit of confused rage, he starts screaming at the crowd, calling them basic, of all things. Taken aback and fed up with Squilliam's pretentiousness, everyone finally pushes back. They just want to be normal fish again, and suddenly all their different grievances come to light. Sandy protests Squilliam's exclusionary rules and his disregard for the community's rustic charm. Mrs. Puff, who doesn't want to become shark food, demands payment from Squilliam, and the once loyal residents of the Fancy Crab bear signs chanting, "Bring back the extra Krabby Patties," because that's the one part of the Fancy Crab they did like. SpongeBob, not really understanding the situation, just kinda jumps from one group to the next and yells what they're yelling. And then it happens. Okay, I'm gonna try to do a Patrick voice. Quiet! The extra Krabby Patties are actually extra Mr. Krabs patties. You've been eating Mr. Krabs! The various mobs look stunned. Pearl is in tears. Squilliam, now overwhelmed, tries to regain control, but as the chaos peaks, he finds himself standing alone on the stage. The image of his perfect bikini bottom is shattered. His once flawless confidence crumbles as he realizes his success was never about true greatness, but about outshining everyone around him. If he just had someone specific, perhaps another octopus to rate himself against, he could have been different. Without that rivalry, he has nothing to measure himself against. But epiphanies like these mean less than a whale's blowhole, while the police are carrying you away, which they did. With Squilliam gone, the Krusty Krab reverts to its original, imperfect glory, now run by Patrick, just because with his tucks, that felt like the most natural thing to do. SpongeBob returns to flipping Krabby Patties with renewed enthusiasm, and even Sandy, still annoyed at Squilliam's environmental mess, smiles at the restored harmony of Bikini Bottom. When Mr. Krabs finally returns from his holiday on the island, he says, "What did I miss?" And Patrick replies, "Not much," having forgotten completely that just days ago he accused Squilliam of putting Mr. Krabs on the menu. Mr. Krabs is of course beyond himself with joy because he got paid for the sale of the Krusty Krab and now he has it back as well. Now that's a good deal. Without Squidward being born, Bikini Bottom was thrown into chaos, but even more surprising, Squilliam Fancy Son, our so-called symbol of success, learned a harsh truth. Greatness means nothing without someone to measure it against, and in that absence, darker traits might emerge. Squidward may not have been loved, but his absence proved one thing: even the grumpiest octopus has a purpose. Bikini Bottom is standing on its downfall. Residents are screaming, and the spark has faded away. Why? Because SpongeBob was never born. Patrick never becomes the dumb, happy star he is. And while you might think that SpongeBob would easily be replaced by the other fry cook who could joke around, his ties with the Bikini Bottom timeline are much deeper, depending on how you look at it. Without him, Plankton is seen as the biggest threat, but the residents don't know that there is one character which poses much more chaos. At 124 Conch Street, an empty pineapple house slowly decays, its windows dark and lifeless. The ocean floor feels a little too quiet. You would think that Squidward's life would be much quieter now, but this piece comes at a cost. Squidward Tentacles sleeps peacefully, and under a nearby rock, Patrick Star remains in permanent hibernation, never having met the best friend who would have given his life purpose. However, the true impact of SpongeBob's absence reaches far beyond his neighborhood, and nowhere is this change more evident than at a certain restaurant in the heart of Bikini Bottom. Bikini Bottom doesn't know what it lost. Because SpongeBob never existed, no one misses him. No one wonders why the Krusty Krab's fry station is a revolving door of failures. No one questions why Bikini Bottom feels just a little off, like a joke with no punchline. Mr. Krabs, of course, feels it the most. The Krusty Krab is falling apart. It stands as a shadow of what it could have been. Not just in the "it's always been a little gross" kind of way, but in the financial disaster kind of way. Finding a decent fry cook has been impossible. Either they quit within a day, realizing the job is insanely demanding, or Mr. Krabs pushes them out with his extreme cost-cutting measures. Employees are expected to bring their own spatulas, work 16-hour shifts, and clean the grease traps with their bare hands. Mr. Krabs, once a shrewd but ultimately good-hearted businessman, now spends his days desperately trying to keep his failing restaurant afloat. Jim, the current fry cook, burns another batch of Krabby Patties. The smell of charred seafood wafts through the restaurant as frustrated customers walk out, never to return. Mr. Krabs winces at every squeak of the door, watching his profits literally walk away. His claws, once proudly polishing his first dollar, now nervously click against the cash register as he counts his dwindling daily earnings. So naturally, Mr. Krabs turns to his last remaining option, Squidward. In the original timeline, Squidward stayed at the Krusty Krab out of habit. He hated SpongeBob, but he hated change more. And as much as he complained, SpongeBob gave his life structure. Something to push against. Without him, Squidward suddenly realizes he doesn't have to be here. Why is he even working at the Krusty Krab? For money? No, he can barely afford rent as it is. For social interaction? Please. The only people he talks to are Mr. Krabs, who treats him like a cheap mop, and customers who don't even remember his name. So he does what he could never do in the real timeline. He quits. For real this time. No hesitation, no second guessing. He hands in his uniform, packs his clarinet, and leaves Bikini Bottom for good. Across the street, Plankton watches with growing satisfaction, but he doesn't make any move yet, because the Chum Bucket's neon signs now shine brighter than the Krusty Krab's faded boards. Not that Plankton's cooking has improved, but in a town with no alternatives, even mediocre food can attract customers. However, this is not the kind of success Plankton was hoping for, and he still has darker plans to grow his empire. But where is Pearl? Why doesn't she help her father? She might look smart and intelligent, but there's a reason she isn't there to help Mr. Krabs. And just like that, Mr. Krabs is completely alone. With no fry cook and no cashier, the Krusty Krab is doomed. For the first time in his life, Mr. Krabs faces true financial ruin. The restaurant that was once Bikini Bottom's most famous eatery is now a ghost town. But just when he thinks it can't get any worse, Plankton knocks on the door, and he's not here to steal the formula. He's here to buy it. For years, Plankton has tried everything to get the Krabby Patty secret formula. Giant robots, mind control, elaborate disguises, but none of it worked, because SpongeBob was always there to stop him. Not this time. This time, he doesn't need to steal anything. Because the Krusty Krab is already failing. And Mr. Krabs? He's more desperate than ever. At first, Mr. Krabs refuses. The very thought of selling the formula makes his shell curl. It's his legacy, his pride, his baby. But then Plankton lays out the numbers. The Krusty Krab's revenue is a disaster. The debt collectors are closing in. The only way out is to sell. And for the first time in his life, Mr. Krabs has no choice. He signs the deal, and just like that, Plankton wins. Partially. But this is just the beginning of the darkest chapter in Bikini Bottom's history. With the formula in hand, he doesn't just compete with the Krusty Krab, he owns the Krusty Krab. But then, the real betrayal happens, because the second Mr. Krabs hands over the recipe, Plankton kicks him out. No partnership, no joint business, nothing. The Krusty Krab is now a chum bucket enterprise, and Mr. Krabs is left with nothing. Mr. Krabs retreats to his anchor house, a broken crustacean, his entrepreneurial spirit crushed under the weight of failure. Pearl visits less and less often. She can't bear to see her father's dream crumbling. But what about Sandy? She is a great scientist and researcher. She would probably help Mr. Krabs, but in this timeline, she is not living in Bikini Bottom anymore. You will find out why later. However, we first need to talk about the character whose life is affected the most because of SpongeBob's absence. Patrick Star lives a life of true isolation. Without SpongeBob's friendship to draw him out into the world, he rarely leaves his home. Eventually, Patrick's parents make a difficult decision. During one of their rare visits, they find their son living in complete squalor. They convince him to return home with them to their own rock farm. Meanwhile, Bikini Bottom watches as Plankton industrializes the Krabby Patty. With Karen's AI technology and unlimited resources, Plankton turns the Krabby Patty into a mass-produced, citywide empire. But Bikini Bottom residents don't know that it will eventually lead to a war. Because Plankton isn't just running a restaurant anymore, he's running Bikini Bottom, and nobody realizes the true consequences. Not yet. There's no Sandy Cheeks to stop him, because the tree dome at the heart of Bikini Bottom was never built. Without SpongeBob's enthusiasm and friendship, Sandy Cheeks never found a compelling reason to establish her underwater research station in this particular stretch of the ocean. Meanwhile, Plankton is apparently making Bikini Bottom a better place to live in. He had spent years being a joke, and now, for the first time in his miserable existence, he was on top. With Karen's AI running the logistics, Plankton turned the Krabby Patty into a product that could be mass-produced, mass-marketed, and mass-consumed. The new Krabby Patty wasn't made with love or passion. It was made with efficiency, precise measurements, and scientific perfection. Bikini Bottom had never seen a fast food empire like this before. But again, the city was not seeing what Plankton was doing, as they were worried because of a much bigger issue. At first, the city embraced the change. Lines wrapped around the block at Plankton's new futuristic restaurants. The days of waiting for a distracted fry cook to slap together a meal were over. Every meal was identical, consistent, and served within seconds, just like McDonald's. The convenience was intoxicating. But something felt off. The food was perfect, but it wasn't satisfying. There was no warmth, no charm, no personality in the experience. The patties tasted hollow. Every bite was exactly the same, every flavor note calculated to be optimal, yet somehow it wasn't enough. But the real problem was jellyfish. Without SpongeBob, no one was keeping the jellyfish population in check. For years, without realizing it, SpongeBob had been the one controlling their numbers through his constant jellyfishing trips. It had been a delicate balance, one no one had ever paid attention to. Without him, the jellyfish multiplied. Initially, it was a mild inconvenience. A few extra jellyfish buzzing around, some minor stings here and there, annoying but manageable. Then they started forming swarms, moving in clouds through the streets. The occasional zap became a constant threat. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. Entire districts of Bikini Bottom were overrun. Businesses shut down, unable to keep customers from being fried on their way to work. Houses were abandoned. The once thriving streets of Bikini Bottom were now ghostly pathways, filled only with the sound of crackling electricity and the distant hum of an approaching swarm. Plankton watched his empire crumble before his eyes. He had done it. He had taken over. He had beaten Mr. Krabs. He had finally won. And yet, he was left with nothing. Bikini Bottom was decaying, drowning in jellyfish and empty storefronts. He owned everything, but his empire was worthless. And that's when Squidward came back. When Squidward walked away from the Krusty Krab, he thought he had finally escaped, and somehow he made it. In a more sophisticated city, his paintings caught the attention of critics. His name was whispered in galleries, his art displayed in elite exhibitions. It was everything he had ever wanted. He attended elegant parties where people in fine suits and gowns discussed abstract concepts over glasses of seafoam champagne. They praised his work, calling it revolutionary, evocative, a deep commentary on existential despair, and Squidward smiled, nodded, and pretended he felt the same way. But something was wrong. He had imagined this life for so long, but now that he had it, he couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Was this it? The conversations were shallow, the praise felt mechanical. For the first time in his life, he missed it. He missed the nonsensical adventures, the ridiculousness of everyday life in Bikini Bottom. But the moment he came back, he knew something was wrong. Bikini Bottom was lifeless. Squidward found himself standing in the ruins of what had once been his victory. The tiny villain who had spent his entire existence fighting for control of Bikini Bottom now stood at the top and looked miserable. Plankton had finally won, and it had cost him everything. And Squidward understood. They had both made the same mistake. Plankton had believed that power would bring him happiness. Squidward had believed that success would bring him peace. Neither of them had been right. Plankton had conquered Bikini Bottom, but in doing so had drained the soul from it. Squidward had escaped Bikini Bottom, but in doing so had drained the soul from himself. And now they both stood in the ruins of a place they had both failed in their own way. For a long moment, Squidward just stared at the crumbling city around him. Then he turned back to Plankton, took a deep breath, and said something neither of them ever thought he would say. "We have to fix this." Plankton scoffed at Squidward's words. "There's nothing left to fix." Squidward didn't argue. He just looked around at what used to be Bikini Bottom. The empty streets, the abandoned businesses, the dull, lifeless sky above. The town had become a wasteland, and Plankton, for all his supposed intelligence, had no idea how to bring it back. But Squidward did, because for the first time in his life, Squidward had the money, the influence, and the resources to actually do something. He poured his wealth into research teams that studied the jellyfish infestation. He built sanctuaries and hired staff to catch jellyfish. Within a few months, the constant threat of electrocution finally faded. And as the danger receded, the people of Bikini Bottom began to return. But Bikini Bottom had lost something deeper, its soul. Plankton would have never thought that Squidward would solve the biggest issue Bikini Bottom residents were facing. He feared that people will soon make Squidward their leader. Meanwhile, Squidward had already made up his mind to take control back from Plankton. With his fortune, he opened a new restaurant chain. Why a restaurant? Well, this was the only way to truly defeat Plankton. But Squidward didn't build soulless machines to replace workers. Instead, he hired professional chefs who prepared the food with love and passion, the two things that could bring back Bikini Bottom's true soul. Plankton panicked. He tried to smear Squidward's reputation, launching ad campaigns to discredit his business. He claimed efficiency was king, that tradition was outdated, that the future belonged to science, not sentiment. But deep down, he knew the truth. People were flocking back to Squidward's restaurants. Squidward was winning, but he felt alone because his only neighbor, Patrick, had left. He brought him back, and Squidward, in all his sophistication, tried to introduce Patrick to culture, art, music, refinement. Patrick, of course, was terrible at all of it. But somehow, Squidward enjoyed it, because for the first time, someone else was as terrible at art as he was at life. And Patrick finally had someone to talk to share meals with, to drag into ridiculous nonsense just because it was fun. And as Bikini Bottom healed, so did they. Squidward had found something he never expected to have, and yet even with all of this, there was an emptiness he couldn't explain. Imagine a world without Patrick Star. Seems peaceful, right? But without him, Bikini Bottom would be controlled by someone who would only care about money. And it's not Mr. Krabs. No Patrick means no dumb distractions, no ridiculous chaos. Bikini Bottom runs smoother, cleaner, quieter. But Patrick's idiotic ramblings were the missing puzzle pieces that kept things in balance. and without him, that balance collapses. It starts small, a ripple in the ocean, and then the whole world shifts. SpongeBob's life is the same. He's energetic, enthusiastic, and full of life. He still works at the Krusty Krab and still lives in his pineapple house. He still wakes up every morning with that same enthusiasm. At first, he does what he always does. He throws himself into work at the Krusty Krab. And in this timeline, his hard work actually pays off in the end, as he will find out later in the video. But the same success turns out to be disastrous for Bikini Bottom. Now, if there's no one to goof off with, then there's no reason to waste time. He clocks in early, he cleans the entire restaurant before Mr. Krabs even shows up, he memorizes every Krabby Patty order by heart, down to the last pickle. His hands move like a machine, flipping patties with absolute precision. Mr. Krabs notices, and he loves it. The customers are happy and the food is great. However, there is no spark. The ridiculous joy in SpongeBob's movements is gone. He's now just a perfect employee, running the restaurant like a well-oiled machine. At this point, you might think that SpongeBob will get a promotion or bonus or something like that. But come on, this is Mr. Krabs. You cannot expect anything like that from him. SpongeBob's success comes in a very different way. But it's not only his hard work that leads to his success. He has this constant feeling that something in his routine is quieter. He finds himself telling a joke but stops halfway because he realizes something. No one is there to laugh. One day he finishes work early but lingers in the kitchen, hesitant to go home. He's thinking about something. Maybe he doesn't belong here. Not that he no longer wants to cook food, he just feels that he can do much more. But he brushes off this feeling. It's not like he's lonely, he still has people in his life, but the connection is not the same now. Although he sometimes still annoys Squidward and talks to Sandy, the relationships are different. Without Patrick dragging him into absurd nonsense, his relationship with Sandy changes too. Sandy is not the same fun scientist you would expect her to be, because without Patrick's endless distractions, she and SpongeBob never develop that deep friendship. In the normal timeline, their bond isn't just built on mutual respect. It's built on dumb adventures, stupid competitions, silly moments where SpongeBob plays the fool and Sandy, the level-headed genius, plays along. But in this timeline, she focuses on her work. She buries herself in research. She waves to SpongeBob when she sees him, chats with him in passing, but the connection never grows. And SpongeBob, well, without that playful relationship to balance him out, he only goes deeper into his work, and that's when the real shift happens. One day, while wiping down the Krusty Krab counters for the third time that morning, he realizes something. He could do better. Why should he just be an employee when he could be running his own business? Why keep working under Mr. Krabs when he has the skills to build something bigger? So, he does. He saves every paycheck, every tip, every spare cent, and pours it into a food stall of his own. It starts small, just a humble stand serving the best burgers Bikini Bottom has ever tasted. But unlike the original SpongeBob, this version isn't distracted by jellyfishing or karate or pointless fun. He's focused, and he expands fast. At first, Mr. Krabs laughs it off, but then the customers start choosing SpongeBob's food over the Krusty Krab. Then, SpongeBob's stall turns into a restaurant. Then, it turns into multiple restaurants. And suddenly, SpongeBob SquarePants is no longer just a fry cook. He's a businessman, a successful one. But with every new restaurant, every business deal, every dollar sign, he feels it. That emptiness. He doesn't know why. He has everything he ever wanted. He's making real money, the kind even Mr. Krabs respects. He has influence, power, and success, but he still feels a lack of fulfillment. And this lack of fulfillment eventually turns into something darker, something that will take away the freedom of Bikini Bottom residents. Soon, SpongeBob becomes a mogul, a legend in the fast food industry. What started as a single food stall has transformed into a massive empire, stretching across Bikini Bottom. But what about the Krusty Krab? Well, SpongeBob's empire grows so much that Mr. Krabs is forced to do something that he could have never thought of: Mr. Krabs, once the undisputed king of the burger business, can now feel that he has been outpaced. His greed met its match in SpongeBob's relentless efficiency. But Mr. Krabs doesn't want to give up. He tries hiring better fry cooks, he tries to get Plankton to his side, and he even offers his life savings to SpongeBob. Mr. Krabs offers SpongeBob to become a partner in his business, but SpongeBob refuses. He is now a smart businessman and is slowly turning into a darker version of himself. Maybe he's now becoming greedy, or maybe he just can't let go of the feeling of being lonely. But he wants to be isolated and above everyone now, so he buys out the Krusty Krab and rebrands it under his empire. He's still not satisfied, and this is actually the beginning of Bikini Bottom's downfall. After acquiring the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob thinks of expanding further. He goes on to buy out smaller competitors and eventually absorbs every major eatery into his growing empire. The Chum Bucket? Gone. SpongeBob buys it outright, not to run it, but just to demolish it. He claims it for beautification purposes, but deep down, there's something else at play, a need to control everything. He should have stopped right here, but he didn't. He started influencing other areas of Bikini Bottom. Behind the scenes, he's trying to take total control of Bikini Bottom. In his mind, his mission is to create a perfect version of Bikini Bottom, just like every other criminal. I mean, Thanos was also trying to build a perfect universe, right? SpongeBob has already taken over the economy. Next, he wants to reshape the thinking of people, which he does by funding the boating school, financing a complete remodel. His money comes with conditions. Mrs. Puff, desperate for funding, agrees. But now every student must watch corporate training videos on customer service and efficiency. A boating school once meant to teach young fish how to drive now indoctrinates them into SpongeBob's vision of Bikini Bottom. Now, Bikini Bottom is unrecognizable. The streets are pristine, the businesses run with absolute efficiency, and every citizen follows SpongeBob's meticulously crafted regulations. Chaos has been eliminated. But didn't anyone notice what SpongeBob was doing? Was everyone okay with making him the crazy dictator of Bikini Bottom who wouldn't take the fun out of their lives? Well, most of the residents were happy until SpongeBob did something they could never think of. While the citizens of Bikini Bottom initially welcomed the order, it didn't take long before the cracks started to show. The residents were organized, disciplined, and the economy was thriving, but no one was happy. Everyone had this constant feeling of anxiety. They were being controlled, and soon they started realizing it. You would think that this would end SpongeBob's rule over Bikini Bottom, but no, SpongeBob was already prepared. He knew this time would come, and he had already hired Plankton as his right hand, which means Karen was on SpongeBob's side. Karen created mind control devices to control the jellyfish. When the residents started protesting, SpongeBob used his army of jellyfish to control them. But this wasn't enough. He started injecting mind control substances into the food items that were being sold in his restaurants. And when that's not enough, he turns to the law. He funds the SpongeBob Initiative, a movement aimed at improving Bikini Bottom. He pushes for regulations that eliminate chaos. No more noise pollution, no more unregulated street vendors, no more fun that gets in the way of progress. It's like he was trying to eliminate all the fun stuff that he would do with Patrick. His first target is jellyfishing. It's outlawed because of being too reckless. He restricts bubble blowing to designated areas, and only with a permit. And karate is entirely banned. He enforces these rules with military precision, using squads of trained employees who report directly to him. Bikini Bottom is no longer the free-spirited town it once was. It's an organized machine, running on SpongeBob's vision of perfection. But there's someone who has had enough of SpongeBob's nonsense. This is a person who SpongeBob couldn't control. Someone who knew it all along. This someone warned the people of Bikini Bottom against SpongeBob, but the residents were too naive. Meanwhile, SpongeBob still feels that deep, aching emptiness. He's done everything right. He's removed inefficiency and increased productivity, made Bikini Bottom a better place. And still, it isn't enough. Sandy, now more isolated than ever, has had enough. She tries to reason with him, confronts him in his towering corporate office. SpongeBob, you're changing Bikini Bottom into something it was never meant to be. But SpongeBob barely looks up from his reports. "I'm making it better." She tells him, "No, you're making it yours." SpongeBob clenches his fists, but doesn't respond. Sandy doesn't give up and tries to remind him that he used to love this place because of how crazy it was and the adventures. But now, SpongeBob has sucked the life out of it. Her words should strike a chord. But instead, they only make SpongeBob angry. He dismisses her, calls her short-sighted, says she doesn't understand, because in SpongeBob's mind, he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. He's creating order. But deep down, in a part of himself he refuses to acknowledge, her words shake something loose. One evening, he takes a walk through his city, hoping to find some reassurance that he made the right choices. But Bikini Bottom has become sterile, mechanical, lifeless. And as he walks past Goo Lagoon, he sees Sandy sitting alone, staring at the water. She doesn't even turn to acknowledge him, not out of anger, but because she simply doesn't care anymore. SpongeBob hesitates before walking away, but for the first time, a thought enters his mind, one he can't push away. What was he like before all of this? His memory is flawless. He can recall every single decision he's ever made, every business deal, every law he put into place, every step of his climb to power, and yet there's a gap. A piece of his life that feels like it was ripped away before it even had a chance to exist. Someone who should be there. Someone who never was. He clutches his chest, an overwhelming feeling washing over him. Grief for something he can't even remember. The realization hits him like a tidal wave. For the first time, SpongeBob doesn't see Bikini Bottom as a perfect machine. He sees it for what it truly is. A cold, hollow empire. Not a city filled with passion, adventure, and absurdity, but an empty world, meticulously crafted by his own hands. He stands in the middle of jellyfish fields, now barren and silent. No jellyfish, no net in his hands, no best friend by his side. And it finally breaks him. He drops to his knees, whispering a name that his mind tells him never existed. Patrick. He doesn't know why he says it. He doesn't know who that is. But deep in his soul, he feels the weight of a missing piece, a hole in reality itself. Patrick Star was never born, and without him, SpongeBob SquarePants became something he was never meant to be. Not a sponge filled with joy, wonder, and adventure, but a lonely, broken king, rolling over a world that never should have existed. And that is what happens when you remove Patrick Star from Bikini Bottom. Without him, SpongeBob lost the one thing that kept him grounded, the one force of absurdity that balanced out his obsessive drive. And the result? A world that runs with perfect efficiency, but at the cost of everything that made Bikini Bottom special. What if Plankton had never been born? The rivalry that shaped Mr. Krabs, his need to win, to protect his secrets, to prove his worth, doesn't exist. Without Plankton constantly plotting, there would be no need for Mr. Krabs to jealously guard his secret recipe with his life. No sneaky sabotage, no constant threat looming over him. But we already knew that. What we didn't notice is that Mr. Krabs only ever had Plankton as a friend. Or does he? Mr. Krabs once told SpongeBob that he and Plankton used to be best friends when they were kids. He explained how they shared good times together, but things changed when they started fighting over the Krabby Patty recipe, which eventually turned them into rivals.
There was a time when Plankton and I were best friends. Friends at birth, you might say. Even as wee ones.
Goo.
But with this rivalry non-existent, the once paranoid, obsessive Krabs, who spent sleepless nights holding off attacks on the Krusty Krab, now finds himself with more free time than he knows what to do with. And that's a dangerous thing for someone like him. The fire that once drove him to protect his secret formula at all costs has burned out. But don't mistake this for a peaceful retirement, because Mr. Krabs is still a chronic attention seeker. What's different now is that he no longer needs to work tirelessly to protect his success. Instead, he leans into his ego. He's not just the guy who owns the best restaurant in town. He's Bikini Bottom's coolest uncle. At least, that's what he wants everyone to think. Krabs throws over-the-top charity events, loudly claiming he's here to save Bikini Bottom. But from what, exactly? Nobody knows. All they see is a sea of inflatable Krabby Patties, his face plastered on every banner, and ridiculously expensive costumes that everyone has to wear, just so Krabs can pose for a picture. You can practically see his ego glowing brighter than the glittering chandeliers at his lavish parties. It's like Squidward's rival, Squilliam, but somehow more in your face. It's not just the cameras though. Krabs is getting desperate for praise. Sure, he's technically giving a ton of food, stacks of donations, but it's all just a show. He dumps massive piles of stuff no one even knows what to do with, hires a small army to clean up the beach, and slaps his face on everything. It's like he's more obsessed with being the hero than actually helping. This is where things get interesting. The people who were once clapping, cheering him on, start getting mad, really mad, because, yeah, he's technically doing good things, but not without that giant banner with his face again, screaming, "Look at me, I'm the hero." And if you dare say anything, oh, they're just jealous, Krabs says. Even the Krusty Krab is not about the food anymore. It's a shrine to Mr. Krabs' ego. It's the cool place to hang out. Not because of the fries, but because Krabs is turning it into his own personal monument.
How long do I have to stay like this?
As long as you keep wanting to sell this many patties.
Does Mr. Krabs even care about running a good business anymore? Or is he now seeking the validation he never had? Validation from his darker past. Without Plankton, Mr. Krabs never had the chance to build deep friendships. Growing up, he was poor, so now he's obsessed with success, becoming the richest, most powerful creature in Bikini Bottom.
Yeah, where'd you do your clothes shopping, the trash can?
'Twas true.
There you go, son. Your outfit's all finished.
Friendships took a back seat as he pursued wealth and status, leaving little room for genuine connections. This is why, now that he has all this free time and resources, he tries to insert himself into the lives of those around him, especially SpongeBob and Squidward. They may be his employees, but in Krabs' eyes, they're more like pawns in his ego-driven game. He sees SpongeBob as a tool for validation, eager to bask in his cheerfulness and charm, and it's almost scary to know that this is kind of the same in our world. A pushy boss, uncontent with their life, looking for power and validation. Let me know if you ever knew someone like this. Squidward, on the other hand, is a bit more difficult to charm, but Krabs still pushes himself into Squidward's life. This need to be included in their lives is not about actual friendship, but about making himself feel needed. And yet, these awkward attempts to forge real bonds only end up pushing people away even further. This is where the real downfall begins. One day, Mr. Krabs, feeling rather bored and with his pockets stuffed with cash, decides that SpongeBob needs a home makeover for being such a good fry cook. While SpongeBob is off working, Krabs sneaks into his house with a crew of construction workers and proceeds to rip everything out. The sentimental pictures, the cozy furniture, even the prized shell collection SpongeBob's been curating for years. He replaces it all with impractical items like a golden boatmobile, a jellyfish garden filled with stinging jellyfish that he insists will be great for the ambiance, amongst other unnecessary material things. By the time SpongeBob gets home, he's filled with multiple emotions: gratitude, confusion, and then frustration.
Hey, take it easy. Ow! No, I'll talk to him.
The living room looks like a carnival on a bad day. Krabby Patty inflatable chairs, an in-house playground for Gary, and neon signs flashing Employee of the Month everywhere. SpongeBob, the people pleaser, gives it a look, and well, it's a lot. He doesn't complain though, and tries to relax anyways. But suddenly, bam, jellyfish sting him from every direction. It's a disaster. "Mr. Krabs," he finally yells, with an unusually sharp voice, as he scans the mess one more time. "What did you do to my house?" He then points to the boatmobile. "I don't even have a driver's license, Mr. Krabs." Mr. Krabs, thinking this is just another instance of SpongeBob's usual playful antics, smirks and waves his claw. "Oh, it's all for you, lad, to make you the happiest fry cook in Bikini Bottom. A little bit of luxury never hurt anyone, eh? But SpongeBob is not buying it this time. Luxury? He takes a step forward, with his patience completely worn off. You completely ignored everything I actually like. All my memories, my things, everything that made this place mine is gone. I loved my home the way it was, Mr. Krabs, and you turned it into your personal playground. Krabs' smile fades for just a moment, but it's quickly replaced with his usual defensive tone. I thought I was doing something nice, SpongeBob. You should be thankful for all this. SpongeBob angrily sends Krabs home so he can try to fix this mess as soon as possible. For the first time in a long while, Krabs is stunned. There's no applause, no gratitude, just an angry, disappointed SpongeBob standing before him. With a wounded ego, Krabs goes to visit someone who knows SpongeBob better than anyone, Patrick. He's convinced that he's done nothing wrong and needs some reassurance, so he knocks on Patrick's door. I tried to help SpongeBob, and he got all mad at me, Krabs says, his voice rising with frustration while he explains the situation. I gave him everything he could ever want. What did I do wrong? Patrick scratches his head, then asks, well, did you actually ask SpongeBob what he wanted, or did you just give him stuff? Maybe he isn't grateful because you didn't really listen to what he needed. But all Krabs hears in his own egoistic, disillusioned mind is that SpongeBob is just ungrateful. He mutters under his breath, if he doesn't want my help, maybe I should just find someone else who appreciates it. With that, Krabs stomps off, deciding to pay Squidward a visit. If SpongeBob won't be grateful for his generosity, maybe Squidward will. Because to Krabs, the only thing that really matters is being seen as the hero, no matter who he has to screw over along the way. Little does he know that doing that would have a completely different effect than he intended. To be fair, Krabs is just looking to be admired, but his grand gestures don't land quite the way he expects. He wants to be seen as a hero, the one who swoops in to solve everyone's problems, but lately, he's the one everyone's running from. Squidward's finally given a shot at his dream performance, a clarinet recital that could make or break his artistic career. He's worked for weeks, preparing for the big night, hoping to gain respect from potential artistic connections. But here comes Krabs, who decides he wants to support Squidward. But he doesn't just show up, though. Oh no. Krabs takes over the entire event. He orders for confetti and balloons to be poured on Squidward in the middle of a set, and Squidward sucks some of it into his clarinet and gets choked. Squidward's big moment is ruined, and his hopes to finally do something fulfilling for once is crushed. All by this egoistic act of Krabs. Instead of impressing important people, he's been utterly embarrassed. Krabs tried to make it up to him by getting him an invite to showcase his abstract art at an exclusive art exhibition, because he believes everything can be bought, even forgiveness. But for Squidward, this could be his chance to finally earn the respect he deserves, surrounded by critics, buyers, and potential fans. Again, Mr. Krabs isn't content to let Squidward shine. He's there, throwing out money to buy every single one of Squidward's pieces. He would claim he's helping Squidward out by making him richer, but deep down, he's just happy to flex his wealth, dominating the event with his ridiculous spending spree and making it all about himself instead of Squidward's work. People at the exhibition aren't talking about Squidward's art. They're asking Krabs for restaurant deals, hoping to get in good with him. Nobody else even got a chance to look at Squidward's work because Mr. Krabs bought it all. Instead of gaining respect as an artist, Squidward is left feeling like an invisible servant, stuck in Krabs' constant shadow, even falling deeper than before. This humiliation is the final straw for Squidward. He's fed up. He can't get ahead while Mr. Krabs is constantly getting in his way. The only way Squidward believes he can finally escape Krabs' ego-driven influence is by beating him at his own game and creating his own classy upscale restaurant. One that can rival the Krusty Krab in prestige and respect, starting with stealing the Krabby Patty formula. The thought of launching his own restaurant, free from Krabs' ego and interference, ignites something in Squidward. He knows that to compete with the Krusty Krab, he needs to outshine Krabs in every way possible. But he also knows that Mr. Krabs is never far from the vault that holds the prized secret. To pull off his plan, Squidward needs to be clever. The ever-cunning Squidward comes up with a devious scheme. He convinces Mrs. Puff to go on a date with Krabs, casually mentioning how Mr. Krabs can't stop talking about her, building up a fantasy of a romantic evening full of luxury and excitement. He paints a picture of Krabs being completely in love with her, and how he wants to change her life for the better. Intrigued and flattered by the attention, Mrs. Puff reluctantly agrees, imagining a grand fairy tale-like experience with Krabs.
Good evening, me dear. May I say you look lovelier than a stack of 20s.
Oh, Eugene.
Now you just relax, Puffkins, while I consult with me very expensive private chefs.
On their date, Krabs is more interested in throwing money at Mrs. Puff than actually getting to know her. He brags about yachts, mansions, and how much he can change her life, completely ignoring her attempts at conversation. Mrs. Puff grows increasingly frustrated as Krabs pours more cash on the table, believing that money is all that matters. Is there more to the date than this? She asks, but Krabs just brushes her off, feeling proud of his generosity. Meanwhile, Squidward sneaks into the Krusty Krab, using the distraction to slip past Krabs' vault. As Krabs continues his self-centered show, Squidward moves closer to his goal, the Krabby Patty formula. When she's had enough, Mrs. Puff stands abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. Without a word, she turns and walks away coldly, leaving Mr. Krabs staring after her in shock. He hadn't expected this. "Wait, Mrs. Puff," Krabs calls out, scrambling to catch up, and his voice filled with desperation. "I didn't mean it, please." But she won't stop. Her steps are steady and unwavering. Krabs stands there, his shoulders slumped, defeated. The weight of his actions hit him hard. He had tried so hard to impress her, but all he had done was push her away. Back at the Krusty Krab, with the formula in his grasp, Squidward stands in the vault with the formula, wrestling with a deep, bitter irony. The thing he has wanted for himself, Krabs' attention, his success, is nothing but an empty prize. He may have the secret formula, but it won't give him the respect he's always wanted. He has no interest in running a restaurant. He wants to be an artist. And the realization strikes him harder than any failure. The more he tries to outdo Krabs, the more he becomes just like him, desperate for admiration and willing to trample over others to get it. But just then, Krabs bursts in, crying from his date. He spots Squidward and freezes, realizing that he's been played. Double the heartbreak for this guy. Squidward's anger finally gives way to something far more painful: regret. For the first time, he sees the vulnerability in Krabs' actions. The need for control, for adoration, is born out of a fear of being forgotten, of being alone. Squidward, formula still in hand, looks at him, conflicted. The rivalry, the competition, the need for validation is all just distractions, pushing people away from what really matters. Krabs is right there, vulnerable, like Squidward never expected him to be. The formula, for all its power, is meaningless at this moment. In one last surprising moment of kindness, Squidward puts the formula down, pushing it back toward Krabs. He doesn't say anything at first, but as he leaves the vault, he turns back and speaks softly. "Maybe it's time you stop trying to save everyone, Krabs, and start listening to them." The ego that once fueled Krabs' every move faded into the background, replaced by a quieter, more fulfilling purpose. True connection, and a reminder that true success isn't measured by wealth or recognition, but by the bonds we form and the lives we impact. Squidward may still have his dreams of art and recognition, but now he knows that it's not worth sacrificing who you are just to win. Krabs, with the formula in hand, looks at it one last time. The chase for validation has ended, and a new path forward begins, for both of them. In the end, the formula stayed locked away, no longer a symbol of his power, but a reminder of what he almost lost, the chance to truly connect.
What if your loud, overbearing neighbor had never existed? For once, your source of misery and depression are finally gone. Just you, the clarinet, and peace. You're living the life you've always wanted. Isn't that beautiful? Squidward wakes up in the morning. It's quiet, no interruption, no chaos, just some birds chirping in the distance. Bikini Bottom seems brighter this way. Job at the Krusty Krab still sucks, but it's bearable, because at least nobody pesters you at work. Squidward finally gets the time to focus, to create, to be the artist he always thought he could be. For the first time in who knows how long, Squidward is completely alone. No SpongeBob and his weird antics. No one follows him around anytime. But somehow it feels off. He starts talking to himself, practicing insults that no one hears, arguing with paintings, yelling at the air. Why? Because in this world, SpongeBob never moved in next door, never worked at the Krusty Krab, and never ruined a single moment of Squidward's day. Every second Squidward remembers, this was supposed to be the perfect life. Because if SpongeBob was truly the one ruining Squidward's life, then taking him out of the picture should fix everything, right? But before we dive deeper, we need to quickly understand one thing. Who is Squidward Q Tentacles, really? On the surface, Squidward is a pretty simple guy. He's grumpy, he hates his job, hates his neighbors, sometimes plays the clarinet in his free time, badly. Squidward thinks he's a genius, like artistic genius, but no one really cares. But peel back the sarcasm and you will find a man full of resentment. A guy who once had ambition to be a respected artist, a musician, a someone. Instead, he's stuck at a dead-end job, paid in pennies, surrounded by people he can't stand, and worst of all, he suffers from it. He blames SpongeBob and everyone else for it. But is any of that true? There has to be a big reason why Squidward never leaves, never risks, never climbs out of the life he hates. And this is what makes the question so interesting. In the episode The Original Fry Cook, we see this even more clearly. When Jim, the legendary former fry cook, comes back, Squidward is shaken. Not because Jim is back, but because Jim actually left. Jim made it out. Jim became something, and Squidward stayed behind, still stuck behind that cash register. That moment isn't about jealousy. It's about regret. Deep, bitter regret. The kind that eats at you year after year. And that's the version of Squidward we meet in episode 1. Not a monster, not a villain, just a guy who thought he would be more by now and has no idea how to fix it. Squidward represents something a lot of people feel, the slow burn of settling. Realizing life didn't turn out the way you'd hoped and starting to wonder, what did I do wrong? But since the very beginning of this show, we have seen SpongeBob as the one who is always making problems for Squidward, ruining Squidward's life every single day. It sounds dramatic, but think about it. From day one, SpongeBob is in Squidward's face. He's pestering Squidward on a daily basis. At work, at home, at the grocery store, he is the annoying neighbor and coworker. And what if that's not just annoying? What if it's also destructive? Most people would think that SpongeBob is the cause of Squidward's depression and failure, not just by being loud or annoying, but by breaking down Squidward's mental state over time. Squidward can't focus on his art, can't find peace on his day off, he can't even do his hobby without troubles. Every attempt at happiness is hijacked by SpongeBob's well-meaning chaos. Even if Squidward tries to quit his job or move away, something will always drag him back, and usually SpongeBob is right there in the middle of it. Some fans go even further, saying that Squidward is stuck in a loop that Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob, and even Bikini Bottom itself keep him trapped in. He quits his job, only to crawl back. He tries to follow his dreams, only to get laughed off stage. He looks for peace in his home, only to be met with chaos later. It's like the universe itself refuses to let Squidward win. But here's where it gets really dark. What if Mr. Krabs wants it that way? There's a theory that Mr. Krabs purposely exploits Squidward, because he knows Squidward is desperate enough to keep working for almost nothing. Krabs has hired other people over the years, like Patrick, Larry, even Karen, but no one else sticks. Why? Because they won't tolerate the abuse. But Squidward, for whatever reason, does. And if Krabs keeps Squidward stuck, unhappy, broke, and hopeless, then he'll never leave. He will never become something bigger. He will never do what Jim, the original fry cook, did, and escape. That's not just a funny cartoon pattern, that's emotional manipulation. That's control. And if all of that is true, then maybe SpongeBob isn't just annoying. Maybe he's part of the system holding Squidward down. Then again, if SpongeBob was really the one thing ruining his life, then taking him out of the picture should fix everything, right? Let's test it. Let's imagine a world where SpongeBob never moved onto Conch Street, never worked at the Krusty Krab, never knocked on Squidward's door asking him to go jellyfishing or blow bubbles or build snowmen in July. What would Squidward's life actually look like? As far as the show goes, we have seen 3 big possibilities for the outcome. The first one being, maybe Squidward will actually be successful. Without SpongeBob constantly interrupting him, maybe Squidward finally has the space to focus, doing what he always wanted, to become an artist. He pours himself into his art, practices his clarinet religiously, he can start applying to galleries, auditions, maybe even land a gig or two. It's slow, but he starts to build a real career. He's not rich, but he's respected, maybe even fulfilled. In the episode The Algae is Always Greener, we catch a glimpse of an alternate reality where Squidward works for Plankton. This version of Squidward appears more content and successful, suggesting that different circumstances could lead to a happier existence for him. Without SpongeBob's antics, Squidward might have found a more satisfying career path. Sounds nice, right? The second possibility is that Squidward becomes even more miserable. Without SpongeBob in his life, Squidward becomes lonelier than ever. The thing about Squidward is that we often see him always demanding to be left alone. He doesn't want anybody to enter his personal bubble. But ironically, we've seen him go into a spiral every time he's left alone. In the episode Squidville, Squidward finally moves out from Conch Street, leaving SpongeBob and Patrick. It doesn't take long before he gets fed up with the mediocrity of regular people lives. He soon hallucinates SpongeBob antics and starts copying them. He even thinks that it's actually fun to do stupid stuff like that sometimes. That episode is an eye-opening experience. It suggests that Squidward doesn't just hate chaos itself, he needs it to feel something. Maybe deep down in his heart, he knew that he enjoyed crazy stuff, but his ego was too high to even simply admit it. Want a more extreme example? Take a look at the episode SB-129. In that episode, Squidward ends up in a dimension where he's totally alone. No SpongeBob, no Patrick, just nothing. At first, he loved it. Total silence, no noise, no chaos. But then it hits him. The silence isn't peace, it's isolation. He starts losing it, talking to himself, screaming into the void. It's honestly one of the trippiest things the show has ever done. It suggests that even if Squidward thinks he wants to be alone, he actually doesn't. Squidward wants to be embraced by the others around him. But more often than not, he always pushes everyone that tries to enter his bubble, leaving him to be lonely again and again. The last and most convincing possibility, in my opinion, is that even if Squidward never met SpongeBob in his life, nothing would change. SpongeBob is not Squidward's problem. Squidward is Squidward's problem. Even in episodes where SpongeBob is gone or out of the picture, Squidward doesn't magically become happier. He still hates his job, still complains, he still sabotages his own chances at success. He blames SpongeBob because it's easy, but take SpongeBob away and he will have to face himself. It's easy to think SpongeBob is the main problem. Loud, overbearing, constantly popping up at the worst times. But maybe that's just surface-level noise. The sad truth is, SpongeBob might be exactly what Squidward needs, because he reflects everything Squidward isn't anymore. SpongeBob is joy, passion, optimism, drive. He is what Squidward used to have, or at least wanted to have. The worst part isn't that SpongeBob is annoying, it's that he's happy for no reason, and that drives Squidward crazy. SpongeBob gets excited about things Squidward finds ridiculous, like jellyfishing, blowing bubbles, even going to work. To Squidward, this looks childish. But that joy is something Squidward misses more than he admits. SpongeBob also represents effort. He tries, he fails, he tries again. That's the part Squidward hates the most, because he stopped trying a long time ago. Watching SpongeBob push through everything with a smile is like holding a mirror up to Squidward's own apathy. It's uncomfortable, sure, but it keeps you from being totally lost. But here's the thing, SpongeBob never gives up on Squidward. No matter how cold or dismissive he gets, SpongeBob just keeps trying to include him, laughing with him. That is someone seeing value in you even when you don't. And that's a hard pill to swallow. So we've talked about the theories. SpongeBob is the reason Squidward's life fell apart, Mr. Krabs is exploiting him, Bikini Bottom itself is rigged against him. But let's take a breath and actually ask, does any of that make sense? Let's start with SpongeBob. Has SpongeBob's constant presence destroyed Squidward's chance at happiness? Sure, SpongeBob is loud, he's chaotic, he's always around, but when you really break it down, does Squidward ever improve when SpongeBob isn't there? Take a look at episodes like Squid's Day Off, where SpongeBob is mostly out of the picture. Squidward spirals anyway. He overthinks, he panics, he literally hallucinates SpongeBob. So no, SpongeBob's not the core problem. He's a trigger, maybe, but not the cause. What about the idea that Mr. Krabs is actively keeping Squidward stuck? That one, honestly, has legs. It's true that Squidward has worked at the Krusty Krab longer than anyone else. In the episode The Original Fry Cook, we find out he's been there long before SpongeBob, before Jim, maybe even since the place opened. He's never gotten a raise, he gets paid pennies. It's a sad life for sure. The thing is, Krabs isn't the only one at fault here. Squidward is also at fault for letting Krabs take advantage of him. Sometimes he even admitted it clearly. But the episode that really blows my mind is Goodbye Krabby Patty. Squidward says something that hits hard to me. Squidward says 17 years as a cashier isn't enough to qualify for anything else.
Apparently, you need more than 17 years behind a cash register to be qualified for dreams.
That's a brutal line. It shows how much he believes he's worthless, like his experience doesn't mean anything. It's almost as if Squidward himself believes that even if he wanted to, he can't get another job. He's just stuck there forever. But over the years of this show, we've seen him try to leave Krusty Krab. Not just once. In Can You Spare a Dime, he quits and ends up homeless.
Spare change, ma'am?
And in Chum Caverns, he works for Plankton. Still gets treated like trash. And every time he comes crawling back to Krusty Krab, begging for the job he always hated, not because he wants to, because he has to. Krabs doesn't even have to beg him to come back. He knows Squidward will crawl back. But here's another thought. If Squidward was actually a bright and diligent guy like SpongeBob, would life be easier for him? Because let's be honest, Squidward isn't just a bitter guy in a vacuum. He's a bitter guy in a town that doesn't respect him, and maybe never did. Bikini Bottom is full of loud, eccentric characters, but the one thing they all seem to agree on is they don't like Squidward. Even when he's doing something positive, performing, competing, he gets booed, laughed at, or ignored. Meanwhile, SpongeBob can do the exact same thing, and the town loves it. In Slimy Dancing, Squidward gets mocked for his choreography, while SpongeBob gets cheered for doing nearly the same moves. In Squidward, even after trying to perform, Squidward still gets heckled by everyone. They would rather cheer for a doll of Squidward to be precise. People hate him not for anything he did, but simply because he's Squidward. This isn't about talent, it's about perception. Bikini Bottom doesn't judge based on skill, it judges based on likability. And Squidward, with all his sarcasm and bitterness, just isn't likable. So no matter how hard he works or how skilled he is, the town shrugs, or worse, they laugh. Now, imagine living in that town every day. You try to do things right. You have hobbies, passions, and ambitions, but none of that matters because people have already written you off. That's what Squidward's dealing with. And it's not just frustrating, it's soul-crushing. It's the same reason people in real life burn out. When you're in an environment that only uplifts the bubbly, the loud, the easy-to-digest personalities, the quiet gets lost, or worse, punished for not being palatable enough. So what does all this mean? The fan theories aren't completely right, but they're not wrong either. SpongeBob isn't the villain, he's just the trigger. Krabs is definitely taking advantage, and Bikini Bottom? It's not made for someone like Squidward. But in the end, Squidward's biggest problem is Squidward. Because even if you removed SpongeBob, fired Mr. Krabs, and gave him a new audience, nothing would change. If you really watch the show closely, Squidward isn't just annoyed, he's tired, numb, frustrated, isolated. That's not just cartoon comedy, that's burnout, possibly depression. That's someone who feels like their life has passed them by. He hates his job but doesn't leave. He has dreams but doesn't chase them. He blames everyone else, but deep down he knows that's not the whole story. That's the internal war a lot of people fight every day, and that's why so many older fans suddenly relate to Squidward when they rewatch the show. He's a painfully accurate metaphor for mental health struggles, especially the quiet, slow kind that creeps up over time. And that hits hard, because when you're in a dark place, joy doesn't feel inspiring. It feels alienating, like a reminder of what you've lost. That's why SpongeBob is so triggering for him. Not because he's annoying, but because he's functioning. He has energy, hope, goals, everything Squidward used to have before the bitterness took over. But the real tragedy? Squidward knows he's not okay, he just doesn't know how to fix it. And that's what makes his character so relatable, because real life doesn't always offer an easy solution either. Some people need therapy, some need a new job, some need time, help, or just someone to listen. Squidward, he needs a break. A real one. Not a vacation, not an episode off, a break from the loop he's trapped in. And maybe someone who sees his pain and doesn't laugh it off. And if I'm being honest with you, I wouldn't know what to do either if I was in Squidward's shoes. Let me put it this way. What if Squidward was the main character of the show? Imagine SpongeBob SquarePants told through his eyes, not as a joyful comedy, but as a low-key tragedy. A story about a guy who had big dreams, got stuck in a small life, and has to navigate the crushing weight of watching everyone around him thrive while he stays invisible. It wouldn't be slapstick comedy, it would be dry, dark, ironic. A painfully funny portrait of artistic failure, retail despair, and the quiet horror of waking up to the same dead-end job every day while your neighbor yells, "I'm ready!" at 6 a.m. And the most heartbreaking part? You'd root for him. If the show was framed from Squidward's perspective, his inner monologue, his disappointments, his tiny victories, we'd see the cracks in real time. Every moment SpongeBob bursts through the door wouldn't be funny, it would be another hit to a man barely holding it together. Even episodes like Band Geeks would feel like redemption arcs, not punchlines. And Bikini Bottom, it wouldn't be a quirky underwater town. It'd be the backdrop of Squidward's slow collapse. A town that laughs at his pain, ignores his effort, and claps for people doing half as much with twice the love. Honestly, it would still be a great show, just not one for kids. So, maybe the only reason we don't see Squidward as the protagonist is because we're used to shows focusing on people who win, people who smile, people who bounce back. But Squidward's story, that's for the person who feels stuck, who doesn't have it all figured out, who isn't the chosen one or the favorite or even the funny sidekick. That's why it hits so close to home, because we all know what it feels like to be the background character in our own story, hoping one day someone notices. So what if Squidward had never met SpongeBob? Would his life have been better, worse, or exactly the same? And after breaking it all down, only the bitter truth remains. Maybe he would have had more peace, maybe less chaos, maybe even a little more progress on his art or music, but that doesn't mean he would have been happy. Because SpongeBob didn't really do anything to Squidward's life, he just exposed it. Squidward was already miserable, already insecure and stuck way before he met SpongeBob at Conch Street. He's not Squidward's problem, he's Squidward's mirror. And sometimes those people we think are ruining our lives, they're actually the only ones paying attention. And that's why I don't think Squidward ever truly wanted him gone. Because if SpongeBob disappeared, Squidward would finally have to look at his life and realize the only thing stopping him was himself. And yeah, it's a little heavy for a cartoon about sea creatures, but maybe that's what makes SpongeBob SquarePants so good. It gives us characters that seem simple, but they reflect real things. Fear of failure, regret, the pain of being overlooked, and the weird comfort of blaming someone else for your own limits. And that's exactly what SpongeBob really gave Squidward. Someone to keep him from totally slipping into that void. Someone to annoy him, interrupt him, drag him out of his own head. Someone who, in the weirdest, loudest, most SpongeBob way possible, cared. Because at the end of the day, Squidward isn't trapped by SpongeBob. He's trapped by himself. Something's wrong in Bikini Bottom, but it's not obvious. No nonsense, no explosions, no one yelling, "I'm ready!" at 6 a.m. Just stillness. The kind that creeps in quietly and refuses to leave. The patties aren't flipping, the jellyfish aren't dancing. And on Conch Street, it's just total silence. At first, everything looks normal, but if you stop and really look, something's missing. Not a person, but a feeling. Like joy that never showed up. And under a dull, brown rock, a weirdo blinks awake. Patrick opens his eyes. No alarm, no sunbeams, he just wakes up. Like a computer in sleep mode that flickers back on. He doesn't dream, not because he can't, but because there's nothing in there. No memories worth replaying. To him, things have always been this way. His days don't start, they just continue. No salt, no flavor, no shame. This is just breakfast now. It's not laziness. Well, not just laziness. It's that time moves differently when you're always alone. But this isn't just a lazy day. Something is about to snap him out of this silence. And when it does, nothing will ever be the same. Patrick steps outside into a street that feels off. It's sunny, it's calm, but where's the weird? A jellyfish passes by, alone. For a split second, Patrick thinks about following it. But there's no one there to yell, "Let's catch it!" So he just lets it go. The moment fades, and so does the jellyfish. Then, it happens. Patrick hears a laugh. Somewhere not far off. Light, bubbly, and distinct. Not the sarcastic kind Bikini Bottom is used to. This one sounds real. Happy. Patrick tilts his head. He takes a step forward. Then another. He doesn't know where he's going. His feet know something he doesn't. And for someone who usually forgets to blink, that's saying a lot. He walks past Squidward's house, past a patch of land where something should be. A house maybe. A pineapple? But there's nothing there. And just like that, the laugh is gone. Just kelp, sand, and water. He looks around confused, then turns back. Another day ends the way it began, slow and forgettable. Except maybe something almost did. There's a tiny tickle in his brain, like a question trying to form. A sense that something's missing, or maybe someone. Whatever it was, he feels it, even if he doesn't understand it yet. He hasn't moved in hours, still staring at that same patch of sand, the one where he thought he heard laughter yesterday. Every so often he squints like he's expecting something to reappear, a sound, a sponge, something. But nothing comes, not even a breeze. The day drags on, and in town, something feels off. At the Krusty Krab, the lights flicker off early, again, 3 days in a row now. Word is, the fry cook got fired. Some say he quit. Others say Mr. Krabs screamed at him for burning the patties. Either way, the grill's cold. You wouldn't think flipping Krabby Patties would be hard, but maybe the problem isn't the patties. Maybe it's the city. It's not broken, not exactly, but it's off. Too quiet, too tired. Like everyone's just going through the motions, waiting for something that isn't coming. Patrick watches it all from the curb, and for the first time, the silence bothers him. Eventually he stands up. No plan, no map, just a feeling in his gut that says, ask someone, anyone. Something's wrong, right? So he walks up to one neighbor who is never happy, Squidward. Squidward opens the door halfway. He looks like he's already regretting it. There's a long pause. Patrick doesn't say much. Patrick fumbles through something, a half-formed question about a noise, a feeling, maybe even laughter. He points off toward the jellyfish fields. Squidward crosses his arms, leans against the frame, doesn't answer. His face says everything. I don't care, and I don't think you do either. And just like that, the door closes again. Patrick turns around and starts walking around the city. Patrick wanders. Past Larry's gym, empty. Past Goo Lagoon, silent. Past a crowd gathered at the Chum Bucket, of all places. Yeah, that Chum Bucket. The food is still awful, it always was. But people are lining up anyway. Not for taste, for routine, for anything. They're not here because they like it, they're here because it's something to do. Even bad habits feel better than staring into blank space. And that's when it hits him. This whole time he thought he was the broken one, but maybe the whole town feels the gap, but they just stopped trying to fix it. And that hurts, more than Squidward's blank stare. Because if no one remembers what's missing, then maybe it never mattered in the first place. But if it did matter, then maybe Patrick is the only one who still feels it. And if he's the only one, then maybe it's up to him to fix it. This city needs a sunshine, and I'm gonna be the star who fills it. Patrick wakes up before the water gets warm. That's never happened before. He doesn't know why, but this time, lying around just feels wrong. Like sitting still might crush him, so he moves. He walks, past Goo Lagoon, past jellyfish fields, past the places he's floated by his whole life but never really seen. The city is already moving. Boats buzzing, fish chatting, life acting like everything's fine. Patrick tries to slip into the rhythm. He stops outside the boating school. Students circle in tight loops, practicing turns like they've got somewhere to be. He watches them go, over and over. He imagines himself with a license, driving a boat, going somewhere, being someone. But why should he? He doesn't own a boat. Even if he did have one, it's not like he's got somewhere to be. He sits on a bench nearby. A group laughs in front of him, loud, just like any group of friends do. Patrick tries to laugh with them, claps when they clap. They don't look at him, not even once. To them, he's background noise, a pink blur in a world that already has what it needs. Later, he finds himself in front of a glass dome. Inside, a lady squirrel is building something tall, strange, and brilliant. Sandy Cheeks, the smartest creature in Bikini Bottom. Reporters crowd around her. Cameras flash, everyone's watching. Patrick watches too, quietly, from behind the glass. He's seen her before, plenty of times, but she's never seen him. They've never talked, not once. And that's all it ever was. Without SpongeBob, Patrick never met her, never laughed with her, never got dragged into some wild experimenter's sky-high idea. And Sandy? She's incredible. Smart, brave, bold enough to bend the laws of physics just to see what happens. Patrick? He watches from behind the glass, not part of the scene, just a blur in the reflection. He wonders, what if I built something too? Something bold, something weird, something that might make someone, anyone, finally look his way. But the thought folds in on itself before it even forms. Why even bother? Whatever he built, it wouldn't matter, wouldn't make her look his way. That night, he tried anyway. Patrick sets up a little show outside his rock, a stool, a chalkboard, and a couple props he made from sand and shells. He tells a joke, then another, trips over the punchline. Nobody's watching. One fish stops to watch, not because it's funny, but because it's weird. Then walks away, shaking their head. Patrick doesn't get it. Why is it so hard to make people laugh? To make people interested in him? Patrick thought maybe if he acted loud enough, smiled big enough, people would see him, hear him, feel something. But all it did was echo into nothing. It lands in his chest like a rock. He stares down at the chalkboard and then turns and walks back inside. Patrick stands there, chest rising fast, breathing hard. No tears, just fire, like frustration wearing an empty costume. He thought he could fill the hole, but the world didn't just ignore him, it swallowed him whole. And in that silence, something sharp and new starts to form. A resolve, because today broke him. And when you break, you either fall apart, or you start again. Tomorrow won't be about trying to be someone, because Patrick is done chasing laughter. It'll be about becoming something else entirely. The next morning, he comes into a bargain mart. Patrick wanders the aisles like someone sleepwalking through someone else's life. He's not shopping, he's just there. Until he sees it. A jellyfish net. Brand new, shiny, too perfect for a shelf this dusty. It shouldn't matter, but something about it calls to him. The cashier shushes him out, but he keeps the net anyway, no one stops him. He takes it to the jellyfish fields, stands there in the open, wind tugging at his arms. Swings once, misses badly, swings again, nothing. He has no idea what he's doing, but for once, he's doing something. That has to count for something. For hours, he chases jellyfish through the kelp, trips, falls, even gets stung. The other fish in the fields avoid him, whisper when he passes, laugh at him, but Patrick doesn't notice, or maybe he does and just doesn't care. Because this isn't about jellyfish or being good at anything. It's about chasing that spark. That laughter he heard days ago, the one that cracked something open in him. But the more he reaches for it, the further away it feels. He finally collapses, drops the net, breathless, empty, raw, and he screams. Loud, wordless, raw. A sound that doesn't ask for attention, it just needs out. All the confusion, the failure, the aching loneliness, he lets it rip through the water like a shockwave. And then, he cries. Not dramatic sobs, just a steady leak from a soul that's finally realized what it's been missing. Because now he gets it. He was never trying to be SpongeBob. He was trying to fill the space SpongeBob would have filled for him. A best friend-shaped hole, a partner in chaos-shaped gap. And the worst part? You can't replace that. You can only feel it. When he walks home, there's no triumph. Just tired limbs and a sore hand. But he holds the net tighter than ever. Squidward sees him from the window. Patrick's outside sitting on his rock, talking to no one. And for the first time, Squidward smiles. Just a little. Not mockingly, more like recognition. The kind you make when something small finally makes sense. Because deep down, Squidward understands what Patrick has been doing these last few days. He heard that laughter too. He just didn't have the guts to chase it. Patrick lies down outside that night. He doesn't stare at it, doesn't even think about it. Patrick just closes his eyes, and for the first time, he doesn't need answers to fall asleep. It's already morning again. Same light, same water, but Patrick doesn't get up right away. He looks like he might just fall back into that old routine, the one before the laughs. But Patrick made up his mind. He gets up, not to wander, not to chase, but to go there. That patch of sand, the one spot that's always felt wrong. Not exactly broken, just missing something. He kneels, takes a stick, draws. Not scribbles, not a joke, a shape, a square. He doesn't know why, he just knows. Something should have lived here. He sits beside it like it's a grave, or a promise. And he smiles. Not because he's happy, but because for the first time, he understands what the silence was trying to say. It was an invitation. Not to chase laughter, not to copy it, just to listen. To be himself. The laugh he heard wasn't meant for him. It was a shadow. A shadow of someone who was never there, but should have been. He stays there for hours, not sad, not desperate, just present. For the first time in his life, Patrick's not suffering from the silence. He's sitting with it, owning it, and somehow that makes him feel less empty. Patrick always thought he needed the world to laugh at his jokes, but maybe he just needed to stop being afraid of being the only one listening. That night, Patrick doesn't return to his rock. He falls asleep next to the drawing. The wind howls, the sand shifts, but the square stays. And tomorrow, maybe the laughter comes back. Or maybe Patrick will be ready to create his own. After that night, Bikini Bottom lived like it always does. Boats pass, sea snails meow, nothing looks different. Patrick loves to walk through town. No jellyfish net, no puppets, no performance. Just him. A few fish nod as he passes, no one stops, no one stares, but this time they see him, and for once, that's enough. He doesn't try to join a crowd, doesn't tell a joke to a jellyfish, he just walks, just because he wants to move. And somehow, that's the closest he's ever felt to being himself. He still visits the empty spot where the pineapple never stood. The drawing in the sand is gone now, blown away by the wind, but Patrick doesn't redraw it. He sits in the same place, closes his eyes, listens to the wind. The silence doesn't feel lonely, it feels calm, balanced, even. Like the space isn't waiting to be filled, but waiting to be met. Maybe someone will show up here someday, or maybe not. Either way, Patrick will be ready. He walks home as the sun dips behind the reef. Passes Squidward's house. Squidward is at the window, watching. Their eyes meet. No waves, no smile, but Squidward doesn't look away. Patrick enters his rock, not to hide, but because it's home, and he had to prepare for tomorrow. Some friendships never get the chance to begin, but that doesn't mean they didn't matter. Because when someone like SpongeBob doesn't exist, you don't replace the weirdness. You just feel the gap. And if you're lucky, you grow into the silence he left behind.
Squidward is a depressed cashier because he's not willing to change himself. But what if he actually decided to improve his life and stop being the grumpiest squid in Bikini Bottom?
This is gonna be a heavenly day.
No more cashier duties at the Krusty Krab, no more yelling at SpongeBob and Patrick, and actual success as an artist. What would it take for him to stop waiting for something to happen and make it happen himself? Yeah, Squidward. Successful. It sounds like an alternate universe, but it is closer than you think. It was just another morning at the Krusty Krab. The greasy air, the clanging sounds of the register, the familiar, annoying flop, flip, flop of SpongeBob flipping his never-ending pile of Krabby Patties. Patrick, of course, was stuck in the takeout window again, legs flailing like he was auditioning for a circus act. The usual chaos, the usual irritation. But today was different. Squidward shuffled in just a little late, 2 minutes to be exact. And as always, Mr. Krabs starts yelling at him for being 2 minutes late. Squidward didn't even flinch. His brain wasn't on Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob, or Patrick. It wasn't even on his shift. His mind was somewhere else, floating somewhere far beyond the greasy kitchen, beyond Bikini Bottom. And for the first time in a long time, he really looked around the restaurant. At the same grimy floors, the same ridiculous customers, the same annoying, oblivious SpongeBob humming in the back. and something snapped. A thought crept into his mind. What if I just quit?
I quit!
But that thought quickly got smothered by the harsh reality of his life. He's broke.
I'm all out of money!
How is he going to afford rent and utilities? How will he pay for food? So he goes to his place and starts working like usual. But he can't get rid of this one thought. Am I going to stay stuck at the Krusty Krab for the rest of my life? He hated this. He hated that he was stuck here. But what could he do? He had no choice. That night, alone in his home, the thought came back again. It didn't matter how many times he tried to push it out. It stuck. It gnawed at him. The same old reflection in the mirror. The same pathetic self-portraits on the walls. The same failure day in, day out. What if it's not the world? What if it's me? The words hit him hard. He had blamed everything, everyone, but had he ever really looked at himself? The miserable job, the sad little life, he had let it all happen. He had allowed himself to be stuck. Shocking, I know. He realizes that his masterpieces of himself, his big-nose self-portraits, might not exactly be what the market is dying for. The next morning, Squidward didn't drag himself out of bed like usual. He didn't shuffle to the mirror in a fog of exhaustion. He stood up, stretched, and took a long look at himself. It was time. The Krusty Krab, another busy day, the same old routine. The same walls, the same customers, but Squidward wasn't the same. He walked in, his steps a little quicker, a little lighter, no slouching, no dragging his feet. His mind was made up. He was done. He was quitting. Before SpongeBob could say anything, Squidward just leaves.
I quit!
Right there on the spot. No 2 weeks notice, no dramatic speech, just a simple, I'm done. He tosses his uniform hat into the fryer and walks out. Now, you might think this was just another one of Squidward's tantrums. He'd go home, sulk for a couple of days, maybe try his hand at becoming a successful artist, only to return crawling back to the Krusty Krab, ready to apologize. But that's not what was going to happen this time. This time, Squidward has decided to focus on himself. He goes home and looks at the dusty pile of rejected self-portraits in his house and finally admits, maybe people don't want 30 paintings of my face. What if instead of painting himself, he started painting things that people actually want to buy? Abstract ocean landscapes? Avant-garde jellyfish art? A painting of SpongeBob and Patrick wrestling a clam, but he titles it something deep like The Struggle of Friendship. It sounded crazy, sure, but for the first time, Squidward felt the spark of something different, something real. And that was just the beginning. So he stops painting himself like he's the next Picasso of egos and starts making art that, people actually want to buy. Landscapes of Bikini Bottom, abstract depictions of jellyfish fields, stuff that sells. But obviously, success is not a straight line from point A to point B. It takes time, effort, and discipline. Squidward struggles during the first few months. He's using his savings to pay for his monthly bills while his paintings are still unsold. He rethinks his decisions countless times. Maybe he quit too early, maybe he should have continued his job while working on his painting career part-time. After months of struggling, he decides to go back to the Krusty Krab, but just when he's about to open the door, he imagines everyone laughing at him. And just like that, Squidward made up his mind. He wasn't going back, no matter what. The only path now was forward, no matter how hard it was, no matter how long it took. With determination, he turned away from the Krusty Krab and headed back to his studio. He sat down, surrounded by half-finished paintings and the dust of 100 unfulfilled dreams. His mind raced, and then finally a thought hit him. What if I start small? What if I paint pictures of the residents of Bikini Bottom? Just $2. Not much, but enough to get my foot in the door. Enough to show people what I can do. It wasn't a grand, highfalutin idea. It was simple, practical, but it was something. His first customer, Mrs. Puff. She came in, hesitant at first, unsure if she wanted a portrait from the grumpy squid. But after Squidward painted her picture with surprising precision, her eyes lit up. She loved it. In fact, she was so impressed, she proudly hung the portrait in her driving school. Boom, free marketing. Word of Squidward's portrait spread slowly but surely. One by one, customers trickled in. Some wanted their own portraits. Others wanted to try their luck with his abstract interpretations of jellyfish fields. It wasn't a flood, but it was enough. For the first time in a long while, Squidward was starting to get recognition, not as a failed artist, but as an artist with real potential. He was no longer just a guy behind the counter at the Krusty Krab. He was someone. And though the road to success was still long and uncertain, Squidward felt a flicker of hope he hadn't felt in years. But just as Squidward started to get comfortable, just as he thought maybe, finally, he was going to catch a break, Squilliam Fancy Son walked in. You know, his lifelong rival / inspiration / guy he hates to admit is kind of cool. Obviously, Squilliam mocks him, but this is when Squidward realizes something. Squilliam does not make fun of him out of arrogance. It's just Squilliam's way of pushing him to achieve success. Squidward starts thinking about all the incidents where Squilliam mocked him, and he realized Squilliam has always been trying to help him understand his true potential. So instead of getting all petty and jealous, Squidward does the unthinkable. He asks Squilliam for advice. Crazy, right? Squilliam's like, oh, you want to learn from me? Finally, someone recognizes greatness.
I knew it!
And boom, Squidward gets introduced to the upper crust of Bikini Bottom. Fancy dinner parties, exclusive art galleries, he's suddenly surrounded by rich fish who think his nose makes him look distinct and artistic. Squidward, to his credit, plays along. He starts showing off his new artwork, pieces that actually reflect the beauty of Bikini Bottom instead of just his ego. And guess what? The high society types eat it up. Squidward's paintings start selling like hot kelp cakes, and his name becomes the talk of the town. So now, Squidward's life has completely changed. He's no longer stuck behind the Krusty Krab register listening to SpongeBob's nonstop giggles and Patrick's questionable orders. Can I get a Krabby Patty without the Krabby? Instead, he's hosting fancy art shows in his shiny new mansion, complete with a private orchestra playing music he composed. His attitude shifts too. He starts appreciating the simple joys of life, like a perfectly brewed cup of kelp tea or a sunset over jellyfish fields. Bikini Bottom is shook. Squidward has gone from that cranky guy next door to the artist everyone pretends to like so they can seem cultured. He's even made it onto the cover of Underwater Times magazine. Suddenly, he's the talk of the town. Squilliam is impressed, but also low-key jealous. SpongeBob? He's thrilled, of course. He shows up uninvited to Squidward's mansion, offering to cook for him as his personal chef. And Squidward, surprisingly, lets him. Because, honestly, he missed SpongeBob's cooking, even if it comes with a side of unsolicited positivity. He even compliments SpongeBob. Okay, it's a backhanded compliment, something like, at least your laugh is consistent, but still, progress is progress. Okay, so Squidward's living his best life now. Art galleries, rich clientele, and all. He's wearing tailored suits made from jellyfish silk, his home has been upgraded into a luxurious modern art gallery, and his calendar is packed with gallery openings and exclusive soirees. But here's the thing, when one Bikini Bottomite changes, the whole town feels the ripple effects. And boy, do things get weird. Let's start with the Krusty Krab. Without Squidward manning the register, Mr. Krabs hires, well, let's just say the candidates are less than ideal. Bubble Bass gets the job but spends all day eating inventory. The restaurant becomes a disaster zone, and Krabs is losing money faster than Plankton's latest scheme. The restaurant begins to fall apart. SpongeBob tries to pick up the slack, but it's chaos without Squidward's sarcastic comments to balance him out. Mr. Krabs, he's desperate. The customers are leaving because even SpongeBob can't make up for the lack of order. Turns out Squidward's constant complaining actually kept the place running smoothly. Who knew? Eventually, the Krusty Krab shuts down, which is like the underwater equivalent of the stock market crashing. Desperate to stay afloat, Krabs turns to none other than Squidward. That's right, Squidward hires him as an accountant. Imagine Krabs balancing the books while Squidward sips seaweed lattes in his massive art studio. Oh, how the tables have turned. And SpongeBob? Well, he's heartbroken because of the Krusty Krab, but he's also proud of Squidward. Poor guy doesn't know what to do without Squidward around to yell at him. So what does he do? He shows up at Squidward's mansion and says, "I'll work for free. Just let me be near you." Squidward, against all odds, agrees. In a twist no one saw coming, Squidward hires SpongeBob as his personal chef. Now, SpongeBob spends his days in Squidward's mansion creating 5-star meals while Squidward critiques the presentation. It's a weird, wholesome dynamic. Patrick? He's still Patrick, but now he visits Squidward's mansion uninvited, lounging on the furniture and calling it modern art. One time, he accidentally sits on a sculpture worth more than Mr. Krabs' life savings. Squidward almost has a heart attack, but deep down he finds it amusing. Maybe Patrick's carefree attitude is rubbing off on him. And let's talk about Bikini Bottom as a whole. Squidward's success sparks a creative revolution. Inspired by his rise, other residents start pursuing their passions. Sandy opens a science and art fusion lab. Larry the Lobster launches a fitness-themed performance art series. Even Plankton gets in on the action, trying to sell Chum Bucket abstracts. Obviously, they stink, literally and figuratively. And you would think that without the Krusty Krab, Plankton finally achieves success with his restaurant. But the competition was never the problem. And Mr. Krabs was so obsessed with keeping the Krabby Patty recipe a secret that he turned down every single lucrative offer from Plankton and preferred to become an employee at Squidward's estate. So, Plankton is still a failure, but Bikini Bottom as a whole evolves into a vibrant cultural hub. Squidward becomes its unofficial mascot. Who would have thought? But Squidward soon realizes the high society life isn't all it's cracked up to be. Squidward thought he'd love being around the elite crowd, fancy dinners, endless compliments, and finally being seen as someone important. But the novelty wears off fast. He realizes most of these rich fish don't care about him. They care about his status. Every conversation feels shallow, every compliment feels rehearsed. Squilliam is always there too, lurking in the background with his smug grin, reminding Squidward that no matter how successful he becomes, Squilliam will always claim to be a step ahead. He misses the simplicity of his old life.
No matter what I've said, I've always sort of liked you!
Sure, he hated working at the Krusty Krab, but at least it was predictable. SpongeBob's annoying laugh, Patrick's nonsense, they used to drive him crazy, but now he finds himself wishing for that kind of unfiltered, genuine interaction. His new world feels too polished, too artificial. He starts questioning whether this is really the life he wanted, or if he's just playing a role to impress people who don't even matter to him. Squidward finds himself yearning for something real. He starts visiting SpongeBob and Patrick just to hang out, not because he's bored, but because he genuinely enjoys their company. And when Patrick shows up at one of Squidward's art shows wearing a lampshade as a hat, it's the first time Squidward laughs in public without worrying about what people think. Of course, success looks great on Squidward, but only on the surface. But deep down, things aren't as perfect as they seem. For the first time in his life, Squidward has everything he thought he ever wanted, but instead of feeling fulfilled, he's starting to feel lost. And one of the biggest factors here is the pressure. Squidward's new reputation as Bikini Bottom's avant-garde genius comes with expectations. People aren't just buying his art because it's good, they're buying it because it's him. Suddenly, every brushstroke feels like it's under a microscope. He spends hours agonizing over every piece, wondering if it's good enough or if he's just a fraud riding the wave of high society hype. The irony? He used to paint purely for himself, but now that his work is successful, it feels less personal and more like a product. And one day, he realizes he has become the very thing he used to hate. He catches himself acting like Squilliam when he dismisses a young artist's work as derivative without even looking at it. The moment hits him hard. He starts to wonder if he's lost touch with who he really is, and if all the success in the world is worth it if it means losing his identity. One day, Squidward hits a wall. The pressure, the critics, it all boils over. It happens during what should have been the biggest night of his career, an exclusive art show at the Fancy Sun Gallery. Squilliam shows up, of course, and makes a snide comment like, "I see you're still painting for the masses, darling." Squidward tries to brush it off, but it sticks. During the show, a critic loudly declares, "This doesn't feel like art, it feels like pandering." That's it. That's the moment. Squidward snaps. He marches up to the microphone and says, "You know what? Maybe it is pandering. Maybe I'm tired of trying to impress people who don't even know what they want." Then he storms out, leaving the audience stunned. Back at his mansion, Squidward has a moment of clarity. He realizes that somewhere along the way, he stopped creating for himself. So he makes a decision. It's time to go back to basics. He starts painting again, not for galleries or critics, but for himself. Jellyfish fields, sunsets, even a few more self-portraits because, hey, old habits die hard. And guess what? People love it. His work feels authentic again, and it sparks a whole new wave of appreciation. Success changes people, but for Patrick, it wasn't just change. It was a transformation, one you never saw coming. This success broke him. At first, it was a subtle shift that you could barely notice, but it set him on a path he never could have imagined. I mean, he was still the same lazy, goofy Patrick, but that's exactly when the trouble began. In Bikini Bottom, we all think we know who Patrick is, but there was one moment, one single choice, that no one could have predicted. One decision that sent him spiraling into something darker. It was so simple, so small. One decision, nothing more. Yet, it changed everything. By the time anyone realized what was happening, Patrick had become the most dangerous man in Bikini Bottom. And by then, it was already too late. It starts with something as innocent as a magazine. But this magazine wasn't ordinary. It belonged to a man who would never share anything with anyone, let alone Patrick, especially something this exclusive. It was a fancy, high-class lifestyle magazine that doesn't belong to either SpongeBob or Patrick. It's Squidward's, as we saw in the episode Chocolate with Nuts.
Gary. Hey, a magazine! That's funny. I don't remember subscribing to Fancy Livin' Digest.
SpongeBob finds it in his letterbox. Glossy pages filled with pictures of wealthy fish in silk robes, lounging in golden bathtubs, drinking from glasses that probably cost more than a house. SpongeBob, always eager to dream big, picks it up. Patrick, who wasn't even supposed to be awake yet, lazily glances at the pages over his friend's shoulder. And something strange happens. A thought. It barely forms in Patrick's mind, flickering like a light bulb that isn't used to being turned on. He reads the headlines, the stories about fish who made fortunes selling things, inventing businesses, building empires. But what catches his attention most is a single line in bold print. "Rich people don't work." Patrick stares at it. He reads it again. At first, it seems like a passing thought, but something clicks in his brain. The words sink in, deeper than they should. His mind races, and for the first time in his life, a spark of ambition ignites. The idea feels right. Simple and perfect. He says to himself, "That's it? That's the secret? Why hadn't I thought of this before? Just sell something, get rich, and never work again? It's so simple, so obvious. It makes perfect sense. But he doesn't know it will cost him his innocence." Squidward notices them reading his magazine, and as you would expect, he gets frustrated. Squidward snatches the magazine back, his eyes narrowing with disdain. "You wouldn't understand," he sneers. "This is for smart people, not idiots who waste their days eating rocks." Patrick feels the sting of those words, the same ones that have always cut him deep. But this time, something inside him snaps. He's no longer the fool who gets laughed at. No, now he's the one who will make them all pay. This is where things start to change. In the original timeline, Patrick and SpongeBob discussed business ideas, but they failed miserably. This time, something is different, because Patrick has felt the mockery. He didn't see Squidward as a friend this time. Now, he's seeing Squidward as someone who constantly insults him, and he wants revenge now, which sparks his brain to get to work for once. Neurons fire and his brain gets turned on. He's no longer thinking about how to make friends or have fun. He's thinking about something bigger, something that could change everything. And for the first time, he's ready to make Squidward listen. He knows that Squidward desperately wants to become rich, so Patrick thinks that the best revenge is to get successful. This time, Patrick doesn't just suddenly start discussing business ideas with SpongeBob. Instead, he gets quiet. SpongeBob keeps asking about what happened, but Patrick doesn't say a word. Little does SpongeBob know that this silence is going to make him do what he would never have imagined. Patrick went home and didn't sleep that night. Patrick stared at the ceiling that night. He couldn't shake the thought, rich, don't. It kept echoing in his head like a drum beat. He wanted it. He wanted what they had. But was he really the kind of fish who could take it? Could he actually change? The next day, he ignored SpongeBob and went straight to the library. A few days pass by, and then one day, he appears at the Krusty Krab. Before Mr. Krabs can say anything, Patrick shuts him down by telling him that he is not here to eat free Krabby Patties. He's here to meet his friend SpongeBob. Why? Because he's realized something. His entire life, Patrick has been missing the one thing that separated him from those elite untouchable fish. He never had a product. He slams a meaty hand onto SpongeBob's shoulder. We gotta sell chocolate, and you gotta quit your job. SpongeBob's enthusiasm sparks away a bit. Quitting his job at the Krusty Krab felt impossible. He had always dreamed of being the perfect fry cook, loved by Mr. Krabs and the customers. But Patrick's words hung in the air, heavy and inevitable. Could he leave it all behind? Surprisingly, SpongeBob feels a strange chill as he walks toward Mr. Krabs. He had never imagined walking away from the Krusty Krab, never imagined leaving his friends behind. But Patrick had been so sure, so convincing. As he stood at the door, hand on the handle, a sudden sense of clarity washed over him. This wasn't just about chocolate, it was about a chance to break free. SpongeBob quit his job and the two rush off.
Fancy living? Here we come!
Completely unaware that this moment will change the fate of Bikini Bottom forever. They hit the streets with bags of chocolate bars, knocking on doors and reciting their well-rehearsed sales pitch. But in the original timeline, Patrick was useless. He forgot what they were doing mid-conversation. He screamed nonsense. He wasted every opportunity. This time, something is different. Patrick watches SpongeBob's pitch and something clicks. He realizes it's not just about the chocolate, it's about the way you make people feel. This is the key to success, and Patrick is beginning to understand it. He is smarter now, so smart that he motivated SpongeBob into quitting his job. The same job Patrick motivated him to get hired for. The first customer doesn't buy until SpongeBob calls it fancy. The fish suddenly shows interest. Patrick watches, unsure of why it worked, but it's a start. He'll copy it. This is the key to success. The secret that will turn him into a billionaire, and the same secret that will somehow destroy Bikini Bottom. At the next house, Patrick tries something different. This isn't just chocolate, he says, narrowing his eyes, his voice lowering to a whisper. This is the rarest, most luxurious chocolate in the entire ocean, aged for a century in golden treasure chests, enjoyed only by the richest fish in the world. The fish doesn't even hesitate. They buy 6 bars. Why? Because this is Bikini Bottom, and here, a few carefully chosen words can turn chocolate into status. Patrick blinks, confused. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. And just like that, something shifts inside him. A power he didn't know existed stirs. He stares at the money in his hand, then the chocolate bars, then at SpongeBob, still blissfully unaware of the quiet storm Patrick is beginning to unleash. Patrick doesn't know it yet, but he's just stumbled upon one of the greatest business secrets of all time. People don't buy products. They buy status. They buy exclusivity. They buy the illusion of being special. So Patrick experiments. Every customer gets a different story. One is told that chocolate is a delicacy reserved for royalty. Another hears it boosts intelligence for deep-sea athletes. Some hesitate, so Patrick just stands there, smiling knowingly, radiating confidence until they get too nervous and buy anyway. And it keeps working. By the end of the day, they've made more money than SpongeBob has ever seen in his life. But here's the real twist. Patrick now gets it. He understands the mechanics of what he's doing, the psychology, the manipulation, the economic principles he's bending and breaking, and he doesn't stop. Word spreads through Bikini Bottom. The rich fish start whispering his name in hushed conversations. Have you heard of Patrick Starr's luxury chocolates, they ask? It's exclusive, only for the elite. Everyone wants in. And then it happens. The moment that seals Patrick's fate. A fish, well-dressed, polished, and exuding power, approaches. Patrick and SpongeBob have never seen him before. He scans Patrick from head to toe, eyes sharp with curiosity. "I like your style, kid," the fish says, extending a hand. "Let's talk business." And he has no idea what's coming next. Patrick leaves SpongeBob behind and steps into the sleek, polished car. The moment he walks into the fancy office of the one who introduces himself as Reginald Finley, everything shifts. He doesn't know it yet, but this is the first step toward building his empire. Reginald Finley is no small fish. He owns the most prestigious brands in the ocean: luxury restaurants, upscale clothing lines, and a chain of 5-star hotels. And now he's got his eyes on Patrick. Patrick knows what's going to happen next, and he keeps playing along because he still wants to make Squidward regret. He attends business meetings, signs contracts, and continuously analyzes supply chains to keep the business running. The name Patrick Star Chocolates is already spreading through the wealthiest circles in Bikini Bottom, and to Finley, that's worth investing in. "You, my friend, are sitting on a gold mine," Finley tells him, sliding a contract across the table. "We take your brand, scale it up, distribute it everywhere, and make you richer than you ever imagined." Patrick stares at the contract, nodding slowly. He sees the number at the bottom, the number of zeros attached to his name, and that's all he needs to know. The deal is struck, and within weeks, Patrick Star Chocolates explodes into a full-blown industry. Factories are built, packaging is designed, every major store in Bikini Bottom stocks his chocolates, wrapped in expensive gold foil, sold at prices that only the elite can afford. It gets even more strange. Finley keeps pushing Patrick further. Why stop at chocolate? Why not expand into luxury goods? So Patrick does. But what Patrick doesn't know is that if he doesn't stop right now, even the Krusty Krab is in danger. Soon, his name is everywhere. Billboards, commercials, newspapers, and then he makes his biggest move yet. He buys property. At first, it's just a few abandoned buildings, and before anyone realizes what's happening, Patrick owns half of Bikini Bottom. The building that houses the restaurant, Patrick buys it. Mr. Krabs doesn't even see it coming. One day, a letter arrives, stamped with the Star Enterprises logo. The rent is going up, way up. For the first time in history, the Krusty Krab can't afford to stay open. Mr. Krabs tries to fight it, tries to negotiate, but the contracts are watertight. Patrick barely even knows what's happening. He just signs papers and lets his lawyers handle the rest. And then, in one final blow, the Krusty Krab closes its doors forever. The people of Bikini Bottom don't realize it yet, but this moment changes everything. Patrick is no longer just a businessman. He owns their town, and he's just getting started. But what he does to SpongeBob will shock you even more. Patrick doesn't fully realize how much his life has changed. His rock is now a sprawling mansion, and he's still mocking Squidward for old time's sake. But he's stuck in old habits, hours spent eating and occasionally forgetting things mid-sentence, just for fun. However, everywhere he goes, fish bow their heads when they see him. They whisper his name in restaurants. Reporters chase him for interviews. He doesn't have to do anything anymore. He has assistants, lawyers, accountants. They handle the work. He just has to exist. Something is shifting within Patrick. One day, SpongeBob visits his new corporate office, eager to see his best friend. The lobby is overwhelming. Marble floors, cascading waterfalls, and a golden statue of Patrick towering over it all. SpongeBob waits outside Patrick's office for over an hour. When Patrick finally emerges, he's wearing a silk robe and sunglasses, even though they're indoors. He greets SpongeBob with a distracted nod, barely acknowledging him as he talks on a massive shell phone. Something's off. Patrick's arrogance is impossible to ignore now. He's not the goofy, lovable idiot he once was. His voice is slower, more calculated, each word deliberate. His walk exudes sluggish confidence, like he owns every room he enters. SpongeBob is happy for his friend, but deep down, something feels wrong. Then, Patrick drops a bombshell. He offers SpongeBob a job, not as a partner, not as an equal, but as an employee. SpongeBob laughs at first, thinking it's a joke, but Patrick isn't laughing. He leans back in his chair, steeples his fingers, and says, "I'll start you at minimum wage." SpongeBob's stomach twists. He realizes, for the first time, that Patrick isn't just playing businessman. He's serious. And it gets worse. Patrick starts buying out the remaining businesses in Bikini Bottom. Any shop that won't sell, he crushes them. His lawyers find loopholes, his advertisements drown out competition, and soon, every store, every restaurant, every street corner is under Star Enterprises. Even the chum bucket isn't safe. Plankton never stood a chance. One morning, he wakes up to find Star security blocking the entrance. A letter slides under the door. The chum bucket has been bought out. Patrick doesn't even visit in person. He's too busy expanding. Soon, no one can escape him. Bikini Bottom belongs to him now, and Patrick loves it. But something is happening in the background. The fish of Bikini Bottom aren't happy. The wealthy are still on his side, but the everyday workers, the fry cooks, the cashiers, the delivery drivers, they're suffering. Everything is too expensive. The cost of living is too high. The town doesn't feel like home anymore. And in the shadows, a resistance is forming. SpongeBob watches as Bikini Bottom slowly loses its identity. The restaurants all serve the same bland, mass-produced food. The shops all sell the same overpriced garbage. Even Squidward, who once dreamed of escaping this town, realizes he misses the way things used to be. And then it happens. A single newspaper headline. SpongeBob opens a rival business. It's small, a modest snack stand outside the Krusty Krab, but it's a spark, a threat. Patrick, who once considered SpongeBob his closest ally, now sees a rival. The war begins. The cracks were barely noticeable at the beginning. SpongeBob's little stand seemed like a joke until the customers came, and they kept coming. Word spread quickly. SpongeBob was making burgers, chocolates, and milkshakes. It was the real deal. It was a vibe. Fresh ingredients, real effort, passion. It was everything Patrick's factories had lost. The numbers started shifting. At first, it was minor, a dip in sales here, a drop in foot traffic there, but then it became impossible to ignore. Bikini Bottom was choosing SpongeBob, and SpongeBob wasn't slowing down. He was expanding. New sponge stands popped up, one near Goo Lagoon, another outside the boating school. But SpongeBob is not the only enemy right now. There's something going on in the background that will destroy Patrick's empire. Patrick wouldn't realize until it's too late. Fish stopped buying his overpriced nonsense. His businesses started closing. His name, once a symbol of wealth, became a joke. The king of Bikini Bottom was losing his crown. Then came the final blow. A government investigation. A team of auditors arrives at Patrick's headquarters with one simple question. Mr. Star, could you explain why you haven't paid taxes? Patrick blinks, confused. What's a tax? It turns out, despite his rise to power, Patrick never learned the basics. His employees, too, were corrupt, feeding off his wealth. In an instant, everything Patrick built came crashing down. The fall was faster than the rise. Investigations uncovered fraud, unpaid wages, and shady contracts. Fish, who once smiled in Patrick's face, now queued up to sue him. The government seized his properties. His businesses were shut down. His bank accounts drained. Everything gone. One minute, Patrick had everything. The next, he was nothing. Patrick spent weeks wandering the streets. No money, no friends, no place to go. It should have been the end of his story. But then, one day, SpongeBob knocked on the rock Patrick no longer owned. He stood there, smiling, holding a bag of burgers. The same SpongeBob who Patrick had cast aside. The same SpongeBob who had ruined him. But instead of revenge, SpongeBob offered him something Patrick hadn't had in a long time. A second chance. Not as a businessman, not as a mogul, just as a fry cook. Patrick stared at the uniform SpongeBob held out to him, and just like that, everything reset. So, what did we learn? Success can change anyone. Power corrupts, isolates, and sometimes losing everything is the only way to remember who you really are.